everybody, Roar the Lions UK, Matthew Turner, Anthony Fitzpatrick, Steve Collins to come, and a couple of guys from Bear Down, Chicago as well. Hope you're well, hope you've had a good Christmas, New Year's to come, and the Lions are playing on New Year's Day, so let's hope they can get off to a good start in 2023. We're here just for a bit of chat before we start. Ant, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Just watching the Syracuse-Minnesota bowl game, having fun, getting my last bit of college football in before the season ends. So, yeah, all good.
Uh, could you change your name on Zoom for me? I just feel like sometimes if people don't ever see the very start of the show, they're like, if they're new, they're like, who's this guy? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sweet. Who have we got? John Ball is in the chat. He was in the chat a long time before we started. Appreciate you, man. Says hoping to see, not to see a repeat of the Lions' defense last week. Feels a little banged up, but not his legs. How to stop him? I mean, I know that we don't have the defensive line that the Bills have, but they did a heck of a job on him last week. And did you get to see much of that?
Yeah, I did. I did. Yeah, that Bills team's legit. So, but we managed to push it. Very close, but they're a very good side, and they're just going to weigh you down eventually. Kind of the give a go with it. If you want to keep up with the Bills, you've got to be able to score points and score points heavily. And sadly for them at the minute, they can't. So they were never going to. I know you can get up a little bit early on them, but if you can't keep extending that lead, can't keep putting them under pressure, you're going to lose. And we kind of found that one out. We just sort of ran out of steam at the end.
Yeah, I think the thing with the, so we'll get into the Buffalo Chicago game later because it's the most recent game that they played. But the thing that the Buffalo defense did against Fields is they expected him to run. They didn't go, oh, I think the running back's going to run, and if Fields takes off, okay. They more often than not put someone on Fields and put someone on the running back, and then said, okay, we might have to leave someone else free, and just went after him. Like, it was risky. But, that means they go man to man on the back end. It means maybe they only have one free safety with no assignment, and everyone else is either manned up or whatever. It was different. But in the same way, Fields then was just under so much pressure all the time. At the end of the day, he can only throw if he's given time, and you saw that with the deep throw to Velus Jones late in the game, that when he's given time to throw, he can make deep throws, and Velus Jones quick enough to get free. But as long as your defensive line is getting enough pressure up front, and you've got someone marking Fields, spying, whatever you want, that needs to be priority number one for me.
It's exactly what you're going to see when Georgia play Ohio State this week. They've got a quarterback who can throw to wide open receivers when they're down the field, but he ain't going to get a chance to throw to his receivers because he's going to be dead on the ground. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to cut those routes off before you can. But I mean, you talk about playing dangerous games. I mean, I hope we've learned from our dangerous games of not stacking the box last week at all. Just fuck it, leave it open, let them run. We do that again this week.
The strength of their team is running the ball.
The same with the Bears. The only strength of this team is running the football. Are we going to do the same to them? Because if we do, I'm going to be shouting at my TV for 2 hours because, you know what? I trust my corners on what they've got to roll out at wide receiver. If you don't trust your corners to deal with what the Bears have at this moment in time, then maybe they shouldn't be in the NFL. So stack the fucking box, put a third linebacker in, put him specifically for the purpose of spying Justin Fields, and the second he even looks like he's going to move out of the pocket, send him after him. And none of this absolute garbage that we did last week. We were so scared of Sam Darnold that we thought, oh, you know what? Actually, this guy could torch us through the air. Let's leave the box clear, just in case. Stupid.
Yeah, it was stupid. Harley Quinn says, Ant's the most enthusiastic when he's angry. Lol.
Well, I'm not angry today. I'm not angry. I'm agitated. Am I agitated? I'm agitated. I don't like this. I don't want to play
well,
this game this
I
weekend.
think given what happened last week, you're apprehensive as well.
Yeah, I don't want to play this game this week. I would rather face anyone but them right now because this is lose-lose for us. If
There's
we
only one
win,
team I want to face less than this team, and that's the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. Like, there's just teams that will kill us with a quarterback with his feet. That is what
it,
we're
it
really bad against.
it's not even that. It's like if you win, it's like, well, I mean, in fairness, if we win, it's growth from the team. So it technically is a win. But if we win, people are going to go, well, they're rolling out the guy from Section C, Seat 52, who's won a ticket to come and play wide receiver for the day. That's how low their depth chart is at the moment in time. It's like, oh, well, you've kind of beaten that team. But if we lose, I mean, Jesus, we're never going to hear the end of it.
No, we never really are going to hear the end of it. But
This is
I
a
mean,
no.
it happens every week. You call Tennessee frauds, they go and lose to Houston every single week. Any other team can and the thing is, Houston have been threatening to beat teams for a couple of weeks now. Like this wasn't it wasn't a surprise that Houston looked okay. Like they've started playing like a legitimate, still bottom 10 of the NFL football team, but a team if they've been playing this way all year might be picking 8th rather than 1st. Like they look okay.
But that's why I called the Titans fraudulent. I'm not surprised they lost that one because they are complete and utter frauds. Us, I don't think we're fraudulent because I don't think we're pretending to be a very good. I don't think we're pretending to be a playoff team. I don't think we're pretending to be, a top, 10 deep in the postseason team. I don't think that's what we're pretending to be. I think we're a very good team at this moment in time with just a shaky defense. But it this is a big opportunity. You've got to start shake. If you want respect in the NFL, these are the sort of games you have to start winning. They are what we were last year, which is barren of talent and at the start of a rebuild. You have to, well, not completely barren, but there's parts there, but you're still building.
Be nice, Jack's on the show now.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm in the room now. I mean, geez.
Yeah, this is the light stuff.
Just to let you know, Jack, we're not recording for the pod, but we're live on YouTube at the minute, just chatting before the show. So
Oh, okay, cool.
this is kind of how it all runs. So
Yeah, we're sorry about the miscommunication with with our show. We're trying to put it together last minute, and so Ryan wanted me to apologize. I apologize.
No, don't worry about it. I was watching the Birmingham Bowl in the end, so I was well entertained. I didn't know it was,
Okay,
it was up till 4, so it was fine.
My sound okay?
yeah, all good, all good.
All right, cool.
Who else do we have? We have
Brendan's coming.
Brendan. That's the one.
Yeah.
Put his name
So
down, and I won't forget it.
No, I just sent him the link. You've had Brendan on before, haven't you?
I don't know. I really feel like it's only you and Ryan that we've had.
Oh, you're gonna really like Brendan. He's great.
Cool.
Honestly, he writes for the Bears Wire over here. He's like, he's very.
Oh wow.
Very good.
So he writes for Bears Wire, but he's a contributor to your show too.
Yep, exactly. Same with Sheldon, Patrick Sheldon. He writes for DeWindy City, which is like part of Fansided Network.
Yeah.
Logan works for Fox in the betting, category. So it's kind of, we love our crew.
Yeah, that's a heck of a crew. I had no idea.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, we're across the pond. Hey, Brendan.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Not too bad, Brendan. Thanks for coming on. Just to let you know, we're just chatting before the record goes out, but we're live on YouTube at the moment.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so we do a bit of preamble and just chat with listeners, and they get to know the guys who come on as guests before we actually start recording. So.
Oh, for sure. Hold on, let me fix my lighting here.
It's cool. Yeah, I can't. Just as an aside, you can't call yourself the world's greatest, Ant. Stop it.
I wonder how long it'd take you to
You've
figure
done
that
it.
one out.
Oh man,
You've done it. You've done it. Congratulations. You're the world's greatest.
I thought, is that a reference to Pele or not?
No, it's not actually. I don't know why. I was just like, you want me to change it? It was the first thing that came up. I don't know. I'll just call myself by my regular name now.
And there's Steve. How you doing, man?
Yeah, man, I'm good.
Good Christmas?
Good, very quiet. apart from obviously the Panthers game,
Yeah.
which if I was a violent man, I would have thrown my tree. I would have picked up my tree and just thrashed the entire room with it, and then thrown it outside. But
You mean you didn't?
I was close.
Yeah.
Oh,
It felt like
Steve.
that.
It was bad, wasn't it? But I mean, at least I got my most favorite Christmas present though, Steve. When you said you were coming on tonight, that's like my favorite Christmas present there. So
It's what the baby Jesus would have wanted.
it is. It is us two talking trash.
Brendan, I know that your time is limited, so I'm going to try and get to some fun stuff rather than going through boring stuff. Jack, are you with us for the duration, or how long do you have, do you think?
I can give you whatever you please.
Cool.
If you
Okay.
want to boot me out, you can boot me out too. If you got,
No,
no, I mean, if you got
Yeah,
Don't
something
tempt
you want-
us.
yeah, so you want to get to and you don't want me in the way, I get how that goes. So
Okay.
Yeah, I got until about 15 past the hour, so it'd be 2:15 our time,
That's
Central
cool.
Time. So
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go through loads of boring stats and stuff when you're on, but I won't do that because that's a grind. I can do that after you're gone. So I'll leave the news till later as well. So Bears record, injury stuff, and then just thoughts on the game last week and how this game's going to go. And then, Brendan, when you go, then Jack, then I'll go into kind of stats and how that feeds into what we're talking about. Is that cool with everyone?
Yeah.
cool.
yeah, sure.
All right. We did have a question actually in the live chat from Drew, who I'm going to punt into questions afterwards. You say "uh-oh." For Drew, it's a very nice question. He said, "Last week was embarrassing, but there's always bright spots if you look hard enough. What are the bright spots from last week?" Which is a horrible question in a way, but I mean,
Well, when you get your arse handed to you, you get to see how they respond to that. That's a positive.
all right, okay. Everyone ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to another edition of the Royal Alliance UK podcast, episode 171, The Battlefields. My name is Matthew Turner alongside co-host Steve and Ant, and joined by guests from Bear Down Chicago podcast, Jack and Brendan. How are you all doing, fellas? Good Christmas?
Very good. Yeah, lots of family time. I say, food, football, family, play some games. That's fun. Really a very fortunate person to enjoy Christmas the way that I did.
Yeah, it was great. Pretty much same thing Jack said, just being with family. And how about having 3 football games on? That was such a treat. I mean, I do like the NBA. I'm a basketball fan, but obviously football first. And even though the games were terrible, it was just nice to watch football pretty much all day long, to have it on in the background. So yeah, it was really good. How about you guys?
Yeah, I've been working the most part of it, but be all and end all of the business to do. And then outside of that, it's been kind of sat watching bowl games every night, just taking in my last college football action before the season is over. So it's all good fun, plenty of football. I'm not going to complain about that.
Steve, haven't talked to you since Christmas?
Yeah, all good. Pretty quiet. Just a few family, nothing too exciting. So just plenty of time to chill. Like December at work is my kind of like worst time. So like it's good just to finish and turn the out of office on and just regress into like student life of sitting on the sofa, eating crisps and drinking beer. What a wonderful time of year.
I'm still not used to the Christmas Day games. Like Brendan, I'm like, are we not meant to be watching basketball at this point? Or like spending time with family with that on in the background, pretending to watch it, but it's not really happening. Whereas the football's on, and we had the treat of watching the Rams. Yeah, that's great. Brendan, we've had obviously Jack on a few times before, 7 weeks ago, in fact, and so the guys probably know him quite well, but we haven't had you on before, I don't think. So why don't you introduce yourself to the folks?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It is my maiden voyage, so I'm excited to be here. So yeah, I am one of the co-hosts of the Bear Down Chicago podcast with Jack, Ryan, Logan, and Patrick. I'm also the assistant editor for Bears Wire, part of the USA Today network. So a lot of writing, especially today with the news of the Bears possibly looking at the Big Ten commissioner, Kevin Warren, as possibly their next president. So it's been a busy day. So yeah, I've been doing that since 2019, and obviously I've been with Jack and everybody on the podcast since last year, and then of course becoming part of the Bear Down Chicago podcast. So yeah, I've been doing this for a few years, and I've been pretty much a lifelong Bears fan, but I became a true diehard Bears fan in the great year of 2003 when the Bears were 7-9, and I just for some reason was like, hey, I want to watch football now. So been a big Bears fan for a long time.
Fantastic, and thank you for donating your time. Really, really appreciate you being on. Just gonna get cracking with the Bears. We obviously talked about them 7 weeks ago, and quite a lot's changed, Jack. We talked about them before as a team that, you know, maybe the expectations weren't so high, but you weren't far away from 500, and Fields was looking like an absolute beast, and we're sitting here with no more wins on the board since that day, which sucks, really. Like, as much as Lions fans like to hate on Bears fans and vice versa, it felt like you guys were making some real progress ahead of expectation, and it kind of has all fallen apart a bit. What's happened, do you think?
Well, I mean, there's no way of denying the fact that it's a complete rebuild, and I think we even accepted that the last time we chatted, and there wasn't a lot of money placed into free agency. There was only so much Poles could do with the draft and free agency to plug a bevy of holes, to put it mildly. So I don't know. I mean, I think on some levels, whereas we might have liked to have seen another win or two, and we let a few slip away, a handful slip away. I think mostly it's to be expected. You trade away three of your biggest assets in Mac and Quinn and Roquan. You face a lot of injuries when your roster was already pretty anemic, to put it mildly. Ant was just throwing us right under the bus before we even got on today. So, but he was right. I mean, in terms of talent, it's a kind of few and far between so far. But I think if we had put all of our chips in, and like gone after free agents, and we were at the cap, and this was our record, you would see, Brennan and I, probably heavily drinking, hungover, nails bit, but we didn't, and so really, there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of I have a lot of excitement for our Bears. I really do, even, which is weird with 3 wins, but I'm very excited with the trajectory of this team.
I think the trajectory of the team, Brendan, doesn't feel dissimilar to where the Lions were last year. 3-win Lions team, as we know from last year, but you guys have been basically within a score of Green Bay recently. You ran Philadelphia close, maybe should have won that game. Atlanta was close. Obviously, the game with Detroit was close. Miami before that was close. Like, you're not getting blown away by these guys. Even Buffalo last week was like, okay, fell away in the third quarter a bit, but you were hanging with these guys and beating these guys. It doesn't feel like a lost cause team, does it?
No, not really. And I think that goes to show how much the guys are really buying into Matt Eberflus's culture. Like, these guys are playing hard. They're playing for every down. But what's happening is, especially in the case of the Eagles and the Bills games, they're playing them tough early. They're kind of getting them off their skis a little bit. The offense, I think, has great scripts early on, but then those upper echelon teams kind of catch up and they make adjustments. They find the weak points of the Bears, which there are many, like Jack said, especially with injuries the last 2 weeks hitting the Bears hard. Jack Sanborn, for example, has been a huge get and has been an awesome storyline for the Bears coming in for Roquan Smith. He's been a really solid player for that defense. He's gone now, so you have a void in the middle. Your secondary is now filled with rookies and undrafted rookies, literally like all across the board. And they've played very well, but at some point, they're going to get exposed, especially against some of the better wide receivers and tight ends that the NFL has. So yeah, I think that does really go to show what Matt Eberflus is building and just kind of the confidence that this team has. They're a young team. they're still kind of, learning to get together. And I think the coaches as well are still learning to kind of put together, solid game plans and, keep things moving. But yeah, I think up until recently, we really started, every game has been close. I think the Bills game is the only one that really kind of got out of hand at the end of the game, which is to be expected.
So the Bears come in 3-12, 5.3 wins expected by Pro Football Reference, 4.7 by Football Outsiders. So way under expected. This team is getting unlucky as much as anything, which kind of bears out what we're talking about here. Wins early against San Francisco, Houston, and at New England, and then 8 straight losses with Detroit being in that stretch. Conceded at least 25 points in those 8 losses, which is not ideal. But when you take out Mack, you take out Smith, you take out Quinn, and then you say, right, we're going to put on injured reserve Eddie Jackson, Lucas Patrick, Jalen Johnson last week, Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 1, Khalil Herbert, probably running back 1 by the time he went down, and Jack Sanborn, linebacker 1 at that point. How many teams are going to be able to deal with that? And I'm sure you remember from last year how banged up the Lions were and how devoid of talent it kind of was anyway. The similarities are pretty striking to me. Like, this team is fighting hard.
Well, if you kind of take Brendan's entire paragraph from a minute ago that he sort of said, and you replace Bears and Matt Eberflus with Lions and Dan Campbell, you would think you were talking about exactly the same team. You would. You have a team that us this time last year, 3 wins. No, I don't even think we had 3 this time last year, but fights very hard, losing a lot of close games, has the odd blowout here and there, which is to be expected. Injuries, I mean, don't talk to us about injuries from last year. I think between injuries and dead cap, we had nearly 100 million on the sidelines, and you just can't compete when you're in that scenario. But the main piece is there, and like I said, they're installing the culture. They're fighting hard. I've actually, for all the shade I throw their way on that, I think I've been very impressed with how hard they fought this year. That defense, they've given away some of their best players, and the D-line, which is always the backbone of that team, which has been a nightmare for us for years. It's not what it is, but the secondary is still good. The linebackers are still pretty good. Not many teams put points up on, and when it's only getting to the end of games, sort of garbage time, and they're tiring a bit when points get put in. So it's kind of very strikingly similar, and that's why I really don't like this game this weekend, because this time last year, we came up against the Vikings team who were fighting for the playoffs, and no one gave us a prayer against, and we were injured. And what did we do in that? It was a team that fought hard, looking to win, and we did. And yeah, the similarities are very, very striking between these two teams, 12 months apart.
Steve, you're obviously the NFL Scotland's NFC North writer, so you know these Bears well. What have you seen from them this back half of the year?
Team that doesn't give up. And I certainly don't think, when you think about the Bears' record, I don't think tanking has ever been an option or even discussed, because as you guys have said, the Bears have fought really, really hard. Maybe not for all 4 quarters sometimes, but they've absolutely done the best with what they've got. I guess I've got a couple of questions for Brendan and Jack. So, first of all, talking about the similarities between the Bears and the Lions and the whole rebuild, the one thing that kind of struck me as a bit off in terms of the whole story, that the storyline and trajectory that we kind of know, was the Chase Claypool trade. So, what do you guys make of that? Because it seems quite incongruous compared to everything else that was going on.
I think it's about scarcity. I think looking out at the potential free agent market and looking at the upcoming draft, Poles made a business decision to the extent where, is this the pick that he's giving up? Does that equate to what would be a similar ceiling to Chase Claypool? In other words, could you get a Claypool type player either through free agency or the draft? And I think he decided that it wouldn't be likely that he could. When you look at Claypool's ceiling, especially his first couple of years, he caught somewhere around 85 passes both years, well over 800 yards. We know he popped off in his first year. So he hasn't made the impact I think initially that most of us were hoping for. But there's a lot of factors that go into that. How many free agent, receivers come in and make an immediate impact? It doesn't happen very often. I think Brendan likes to say it's maybe only. I just forgot his name. Brendan, who do you always?
Amari Cooper.
Thank you. Amari Cooper is maybe one of the few examples. And plus, our offense is just scrambling to put things together, right? So I think once we get some, help in the offensive line, we get some other offensive weapons, we'll truly see what we have in Claypool. But you are right. I think that it does probably from the outside in look like he pulls one away from the plan.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think I like the move. Definitely want to give it more time. We'll see.
Yeah, and to build off that, you got to remember when the Bears made that move, it was right before the Miami Dolphins game. They had just lost their first of this 8-game losing streak. They were still probably I think they were maybe top 10 for draft picks. Maybe it was top 12 or something. So they weren't even close to becoming one of the worst teams. And you're also trying to build an offense and show that, hey, we want to build around Justin Fields. And we took advantage of somebody who was available, get him in early. Now, I do like to say that Amari Cooper, when he was traded from the Raiders to the Cowboys, he was the only one that kind of went from one team to another right away like that, and then just had an immediate impact. Every other player, it seems to take a while for them to develop. So, but everything has gone wrong since then. Claypool's been hurt. When he's been in the game, they haven't necessarily utilized him in the way that we thought. He's been used mainly for bubble screens and the occasional deep throw. And the Bears have just lost all these games where that draft pick they gave up, which once already kind of looked high, looks even worse now, because you're talking about maybe instead of the 42nd or 44th pick, this very could be the 33rd or 34th pick. So it's a lot. Everything has gone wrong in that, but this was a move that was always made. Because of the fact he was going to be under contract going into next year too. It wasn't just about this season. So hopefully having him in the building now and throughout the entire offseason, things will look good, because we've seen what he can do with Pittsburgh. I mean, 900 yards, double-digit touchdowns, I believe, his rookie season, like Jack mentioned. There's still hope there, but it's just a series of unfortunate events that have happened with him since he's been acquired.
I guess just to build off what Steve was kind of asking, maybe what you guys have said, is there seems to be, for me, a kind of, and I think Pittsburgh were facing this, and maybe that's why they were willing to let him go, was they were going into a weird spot where they didn't necessarily want to pay him. And I think a lot of people were saying, oh, he's going to go for a third, maybe a high third, but a third. And then I know the Packers were in for him too, so it kind of justified the price that you paid. But you're going in now, and I mean, never mind free agent players, but traded players never seem to do that great, unless they're gadget wide receivers, because you can kind of just do that week one and it's fine, whereas he's clearly not that guy. So, traded player, year one's not going to work out that well. Okay, so you're going to go into the final year of the deal next year. If it goes moderately well, do you really want to tag him? Because re-signing him could be really expensive, but tagging him could be just a horrible move. You're in some sort of weird place where any move you make seems bad, letting him go is terrible, but paying him could be worse. I don't know, in an offensive line that needs work, Fields needs time to throw, you're on a kind of hiding to nothing at the moment. It's a big amount of work that needs doing in the offseason to justify the trade.
Right. So I guess my thinking is that's a problem for a long, future Bears problem, thankfully. But what I would do if I were Ryan Poles is I would extend Darnell Mooney first. So both guys are up for extensions. Mooney's shown what he can do, and I don't think he's going to be that expensive. Yes, he's coming off an injury, but he's shown a rapport with Justin Fields. Locking him up and having somebody reliable for the next few years, I think would be in the best interest. And then you see what Chase Claypool can do next year. You don't have to make a decision on him. If he does blow up for, let's say, 1,200 yards or something and 11 touchdowns, absolutely great, pay him. If maybe he's another middling wide receiver, yeah, you did give up a high second round pick, but then you just let him go, or maybe you can get him at a discounted price. But I know there's been some argument well, do you extend him now while his value might be lower? Is he going to want to do that? Probably not, because he's going to want to bet on himself. There's a lot of factors in here where I'm just I'm basically saying let's let all of this play out through next year, because I think this wide receiver room could look very different in 2023, let alone 2024.
The other question I wanted to ask you guys was, I think I follow Bear Down Report, I follow Jack, your colleague Ryan Dangle, so I see a lot of stuff on Twitter, and the name Luke Getsy seems to be getting a lot of heat in terms of volume of comments, and there's been a lot of like really positive comments, and wow, genius play by Getsy. But there also seems to be a bit of frustration creeping into Bears Twitter that I've sensed in the last couple of weeks. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely fair. And I also think that it would be fair to say that in terms of volatility or inconsistency, he's probably been, of the new coordinators, the most inconsistent. Now, you've had 8 different combinations of starting offensive linemen. You have a room full of, quite honestly, B team receivers. You've got so little weapons, and I think, and he's a new play caller. Despite a lot of difficulties, I feel like he's also shown an ability to adjust. And, the fact that we lead the NFL in rushing, and I think as of last week, even if you take Fields' numbers out, we were still 9th in rushing with a ragtag offensive line. As I said, that's been switched up quite a bit. I just feel like you can only do so much with what you're given. And we talked about it. Brendan mentioned it earlier. Talent trumps all. I mean, you look at your wide receiver core in your backfield, you think about the speed, athleticism, and ability that those players have. We don't have that. And yet Getsy has done his best to make the most of it. And I will just say, and Brennan has heard me say this a lot, what I really love about Flus is in an interview once he mentioned the fact that the most important part, the backbone of any franchise, is the relationship between the position coach and the player. And what I have seen, we don't get a lot of word salad like we did with Matt Nagy. We get specific discussion of the way in which these coaches are working to develop the players that they have currently on the roster, which to me is just, it's a remarkable thing to see. We don't really see that throughout Bears history. And so what I like about whether it be Getsy or Williams or any of the coaches so far on this staff is they've made a commitment. They've shut out all the chatter about tanking and about sit Justin Fields and about all the other BS. And they just keep looking at the guys in the room and trying to get better. And Brendan, we saw that all the way back in camp when we went to training camp. Same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing I'll add here, because I agree with everything Jack said, I mentioned it earlier when I said coaches and players need to continue to develop. And that's what Luke Getsy needs to do. He's a first-year play caller. I like what his offense has been. I think when you establish the best rushing offense in the entire league and a historic rushing offense when it comes to the Chicago Bears, a team that's had Gale Sayers, Walter Payton, Matt Forte, just legendary running backs, you're doing something right. And I commend him so much for being able to take this offense and build an identity within it, because we didn't have that the last couple of years. The issue that I think other Bears fans have with him is his inconsistency with situational play calling. He'll have a big, maybe pass play, max protect with Justin Fields, and then it goes for like 40 to 50 yards. And then immediately it's run, run, run. And then you're, 3rd or 4th down and 7. And suddenly all that momentum you just had is gone. So I think he can continue to develop when it comes to a situational play calling. But I think Bears fans as a whole are still pretty pleased with what he's done with this offense and the development that certain guys have had. And that goes from Justin Fields to Khalil Herbert to the offensive line, and even guys like Cole Kmet, who's had a better season than he's had the first 2.
In terms of the end of the season and the last few games, we talked about how the team's very similar. This time last year, we were having a very loud discussion with many different opinions on how the season should end for us. And I heard you talking about this on the Bear Down pod the other day, and I heard Ryan utter the words, "I hope the Lions win." Words that I never thought I'd hear him say in his life ever. This weekend is kind of a point where you're playing us. You've got the chance to beat us dash our playoff hopes, get the one up on us there, or you have the chance to lose the second pick, maybe yours the first, if Houston carry on winning games. Kind of, I know where Ryan sits with it, but where do you two sit on this fence? Do you want the team to win out? And, let's say the players learn how to win games. It's good for them, good for the staff. Or would you prefer that they didn't?
Why don't you go, Brendan, while I compose myself?
I was going to say, I know exactly where you stand. I see both sides of it. I really do. And I've been somebody who said, I don't root for losses. I don't. We're guaranteed 17 football games a year. And I do want to see my team win as much as possible. That being said, you get to a certain point in the season when you know everything's lost. And considering that the Bears have a unique position or are in a unique position to possibly get the number one pick, I'm not necessarily rooting for them to lose, but I'm not going to be mad if they lose because I do see the bigger picture. And again, like if you're asking me this in November, I'm like, absolutely, I want the Bears to win, but when it comes to late December, you've already had an 8-game losing streak. You've seen a lot of development from certain guys. I'm okay with them losing, but I'm not rooting for it. Now, I will say on the other side of the debate, I think you can point to finishing off the season with a couple wins can help a culture going into another season. And I actually have not mentioned this on our podcast yet, but I go back to 2009 when the Bears first got Jay Cutler. And you guys might remember this because the Lions were involved in it. It was a terrible season. It was one of those kind of like what the Broncos had with Russell Wilson or the Browns with Deshaun Watson. It just didn't work. And Super Bowl aspirations didn't happen. The Bears were sitting at 5-9 to end the season. And Cutler had thrown like 26 interceptions on the year. The final 2 games, he threw 4 touchdowns against the Vikings in an overtime win and 4 touchdowns against the Lions to finish the season 7-9 and build off momentum going into next season. And that was the season in 2010, the next year, where they went to the NFC Championship game. I think there is something to be said for building a culture and not necessarily learning to win, but building off that momentum. Because you got to think, when that's the last memory you have of playing, that's going to sit with you until the next season. And we've seen it on the flip side with the Bears losing against the Eagles in the double doink game. The coach became obsessed with finding a different kicker. And that's all that the offseason was talking about from that one kick. So I don't think you can discredit people saying that you can't build momentum with a young core into the next season, because I think you can. But at the same time, the Bears are in such a unique position. I'm okay with them losing, knowing that it could really change the franchise in a big way with the number one pick.
The name Cody Parkey will never be forgotten in Detroit. Sorry, guys.
Of course.
Oh,
I think.
Go for it, Jack.
Yeah, what I plug into, and it could be idealistic, and you could say I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but I just listen to Getsy and Williams address the media here in Chicago, and they're talking about this weekend being a playoff atmosphere. They're talking about the idea that great teams practice and play well in December and January. If you want to be a great team, those are the type of behaviors and mentalities you have to have. They're talking about the idea, like for instance, they said, well, should we sit Justin Fields? And Flu said, absolutely not. Every player has the opportunity to put themselves into this situation in the next 2 games to get more reps, to see more sets. And every time you do that with a player, that there's less thinking going, Williams' words, there's less thinking going on in their heads, and there's more intuitive playing of football. And so that's the narrative that I prefer. I love to see, maybe it sounds cliche, but the Bears really haven't quit. They've coached their roster all the way from, guy 1 all the way down to 2 and 3. And I appreciate that greatly. And so if they continue to play that way and they happen to get a win, I'm not going to bemoan the fact that drops us down in terms of a draft pick. It almost seems as if some Bears fans are putting the entire franchise's future on whether they get a 1 through 3 pick. And to me, while that I do understand the value of a high pick, it's generational, it's franchise changing. I understand. I just, the narrative I prefer, the one that I feel is less toxic and negative and counterproductive than, yeah, let's go, we got to lose, we got to have the tank. Oh, it just makes me nauseous, honestly. If we lose and play hard, fine. If we win and play hard, fine. If we get a top 3 pick, great. I hope we do the best we can with it.
That's funny because that's kind of the narrative we had this year. We're not the pro tanking type. We were the same, and you saw the team play until the last week, and then I fully believe that that has translated into this season. When they're 1-6, getting their ass kicked every week, and things are down, they're still playing hard, and they still have memories of that little end of the season last year where you did it all, and then you've seen what it's done for them this season. It's just that winning is infectious. So I was just curious as to how you guys were looking at it, but you seem to have addressed it the same way we did last year. We were all for wins, and we still got a good draft pick out of it. When you got a good GM, it doesn't really matter where you pick.
Steve?
We talk about the elephant in the room because the words haven't been spoken on this podcast, but I feel that we need to discuss it, and that's Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. And I
why?
I wasn't on the last podcast, so I wasn't able to vent my frustration. But can I just remind everyone here, including Brendan and Jack, that 4 weeks ago the Packers were dead. Like, they were absolutely beneath the ground dead. Like, I think they were 4-8, and somehow events have conspired to allow them now horrible chance of getting into the playoffs. And me and Matt have had a bet on this because as a doom monger and a defeatist, I bet Matt that the Packers would get in the playoffs, and as an optimist, Matt's.
Okay, can I point out that bet was at like 4-5 or something? It wasn't at 4-8.
No, absolutely. but the frustrating thing is that Rodgers was done. He was absolute toast, and Chicago had a shot to finish him off. We had a shot. If we'd have beaten the Panthers, that would have done it. But here he is, and here they are, and they are now a thing again. And it's A, disgusting, and B, terrifying. And I just want to know how everyone is feeling, because I feel we needed to touch on this topic.
I'm not going to comment on it, but Steve, you're allowed to say fuck, you're allowed to say shit, but Aaron Rodgers is not allowed on this show. Sorry. Aaron Rodgers fans.
Look, this I always look back to previous seasons. I know people probably get annoyed with it, but look, we were in a similar position 10 years ago, 2013. All we had to do was win the final game. And it was the infamous Randall Cobb 4th and 8 walk-off touchdown, basically. It's one of my worst Bears memories. So guys, just take care of business. That's all. And you know what? I would much rather see the Lions in the playoffs this year, much rather than the Green Bay Packers. So if that means the Lions winning this week, and then I'm not sure the whole playoff scenario at this point, but just win next week, guys. That's all you need to do.
Yeah, I mean, we're relying on the Vikings here, and I have zero faith in the Vikings, who are a fraudulent franchise. Zero faith they're going to take care of business this week.
You mentioned it earlier, Matt, too, that probably one of the best parts about the Claypool trade was that we cock blocked the Green Bay Packers. I think that was a win all unto itself. So we're just going to say that trade was a win. I mean, all things aside, we can't deny Aaron Rodgers' talent. We just can't. With his experience, his expertise, he's a freaking good, smart quarterback who clearly has some left in the tank. That's me like puking in my mouth as I admit to that. Put all the other stuff aside, because all the rest of it is absolutely nauseating. You know what I mean? All the off the field stuff. But he's good, and he's the best in the division until he isn't.
He doesn't die.
No, he never goes away. Talking of talented quarterbacks, I say this: you guys have one that is starting to get better. But all I see at the minute on Twitter, everywhere, Justin Fields, the praise is it's otherworldly. It's something I've not seen like this before. But I just want to ask you two guys, as it is, as you've seen as Bears fans, level-headed, what have you seen from him this year? How is he progressing? Is he really as good as everyone is making out to be at the minute? Because I know the receiving group ain't great, passing yardage ain't great, he's running well, but still sounds like there's a way to go. But Bears fans seems to think he's really far ahead. What are your opinions on him this year and how he's done?
I really think he's turned a corner. And you look back at the start of the season, I was very critical of his play. I didn't think he was seeing the pocket well. He was inaccurate with his passes, especially like week 3 and week 4 against the Houston Texans and New York Giants. Things just weren't coming to him maybe as much as we as Bears fans wanted. But then we've always looked to the mini bye week where after that Commanders Thursday night game where the Bears lost, the Bears offensive staff kind of came together with Fields and they developed a game plan that suited his skill set and allowed him to be more comfortable in the pocket. They utilized his running more. But then what happened off that? So we've seen the magnificent runs that he's had. You know, you guys have seen it firsthand against the Lions, but we've also seen him get better in the pocket. He's keeping his eyes downfield more. He's creating more space with his legs and looking downfield for his receivers. His completion percentage has gotten much better. He's had multiple games of over 100 quarterback rating. He's been stacking those up. Yes. And look, he's also been injured too for that one game. But I've seen a guy that is doing as much as he physically can with a depleted roster, a depleted receiving group. And literally every single week since that Falcons game, he's lost Darnell Mooney. He's lost Chase Claypool. Now Equanimeous St. Brown is down. Now there's a chance Dante Pettis might not even be able to play. And he's been kind of a safety valve for him. So he has gotten better as a passer while his receivers have pretty much gotten worse. So I've been very pleased with it. He still does need stuff to work on. I think at times he switches up his arm delivery a little bit that, you know, maybe creates a little more inaccurate passes, but you can't deny that the progression from week 1 to now week 17 has been just huge.
I mean, intangibles. I mean, we found our franchise quarterback, which is even better in terms of like our high draft pick because we're going to try to find the Ryan Pace of the draft. We're going to try to find the Mitch Trubisky situation to try to see if we can fleece somebody because we're sitting in a position of strength with our quarterback. I don't buy into the narrative of him, of Justin being a running quarterback, but you guys have seen the clips, right? I mean, there are instances where it looks like the defenders, like the opposing team, put in like a high school secondary linebacker, a group of linebackers. He runs by people like they're standing still. He moves around people, and fakes and jukes and spins like they're standing still. Arm strength, leadership, positivity. I'm sold. I mean, 100% sold on him with very little doubts. He doesn't hang on to the ball as much as he used to. He now has learned to begin to throw it out of bounds in crappy situations. He could be a little bit better at sliding, but it's not his fault that Ndamukong Suh and other players like to smash him in the head while he slides. But he's so good.
I mean,
so that's kind of why. Oh, sorry, Matt.
No, you go.
So that's kind of why, as like you said, we see the highlights, you see all the praise and that. And I know it's been a while since you've had the franchise guy there in Chicago, so it's just trying to get a feel where he's at the minute. But I mean, for the Lions this week, especially, we struggled earlier in the season. But where is he still vulnerable? Where can you still get at him and make him a day? Because that's obviously the biggest question that we have to answer this week if we wanted this one. If he can run on you, if he gets comfortable and passes it, it's going to be a long day. So what have the teams who have shut him down, what have they done really well to really contain him?
So the biggest thing that I've seen from the Eagles and the Bills is they've really been containing the edges. They've been keeping Kai's back where he is not able to turn on the edge as much as he was previously able to do. And that's led to him either throwing the ball away or at times he's taken a 1 to 2 yard loss when trying to run out of bounds. And, we've seen designed quarterback runs, or he's just, hadn't seen anything downfield and he tries to hit those edges. And especially when you have a depleted wide receiver core at this point, that's kind of what he's been wanting to do. And you'll look at the Bills game, his rushing totals just weren't there. And I think even against the Eagles game, he had that one miraculous 2nd and 27 run, which was one of the greatest things that we've seen. Like there was no way in hell he should have gotten out of that. But then aside from that, a lot of other runs, they've just been containing the edges. So if the Lions really want to stop him, that's the way to do it. And then keep him in the pocket, because not that he's like a bad passer or anything, his weapons are just so limited. There's going to be opportunities for the defense to capitalize.
Just and to build off that, I think right now your D coordinator is probably watching all of the Bills film, and they're noticing that the Bills had a tendency to shade their defensive ends, either nose up or inside, and then loop outside backers around, and that created a bracket that pretty much any time Fields tried to do his normal miraculous escapability, there was a Bills player right there. Now, I mean, no slight to you, but I'm not sure if there's defenders on the Lions that would match the Bills. The Bills have a top 6 defense, so they might be able to put that scheme in place. I'm not sure the extent to which they can effectively run that scheme, the Lions that is. But I think really that Brendan hit it. If you can figure out a way to contain that escapability and him creating these miraculous secondary plays, that's at least a start because he's still going to be able to. Hopefully, we're going to be able to establish the run game still, and he can still make some things happen with his arm if the guys on the other end happen to catch the ball.
Brendan, I know that we're coming to the end of our time with you, so I just want to kind of throw the baton to you to kind of close out for yourself in terms of painting a picture of how you see the game going for itself and maybe a score prediction, which we'll kind of do at the back end of when we're all done. But just to give you that chance, then maybe to shout out any Bears Wire piece that you're doing before the game, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So in terms of the game, I think it is going to be a similar, maybe out. What's the word I'm looking for? Final, or just what we've seen previously against the Lions, where it is going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like we saw last week against the Bills, because these two teams play each other hard. But I really think it's going to be another late Lions win. The Bears might even have a lead at halftime, establishing that run. I think we mentioned it. Luke Getsy is great at creating his scripted plays to start games. Things kind of go a little haywire in the second half, so that's where the Lions can capitalize. And it's going to be really interesting. I'm very interested to see how the Lions use some of these wide receivers that we didn't see previously. Jamison Williams is back. DJ Shark is back. You guys have a tight end now, apparently, by the name of Shane Zylstra, who just came out of nowhere, that I'm excited to see if he still gets some run in the passing game. So I'm very impressed with the Lions offense lately. And I think this is going to be a loss for the Bears. It's going to be their 9th loss. The Lions just have more to play for at this point. They're healthier, and the Bears just don't have enough to compete at this point. So I'm going to say it's essentially, I'll say 28-24 Lions. I think, once again, a close game. The offense does enough in the first half, but things kind of go haywire. And as far as pieces I'm working on, I've just did a ton about, the Kevin Warren news. I have 5 Lions players to watch for, which I did mention, Shark and Zylstra specifically. And then some bold predictions will be coming out tomorrow or Saturday. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on. And then, of course, we'll be back on our podcast. Not sure if we're doing that Sunday or Monday, Jack. We should probably figure that out.
Yeah, we should. I think we'll probably still do it Sunday. Ryan's on vacation, so we have to punt a little bit, but we'll make it happen.
Yeah, I'm stepping in as the backup quarterback, so just got to keep the rig on the road. But yeah, no, thank you guys for having us. I've checked out your work a bit, and very appreciative. I know Ryan has talked you guys up so much as just the coolest Lions fans, and he is definitely right about that. So appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we have a good game with no injuries, and everybody gets what they want in this game.
Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time. Hopefully the start of a beautiful friendship. Maybe when you see you next time. But thanks for now. Cheers, Brendan.
You too, guys. Take care. See you, Jack.
Brennan.
Just following on from Fields, because I wanted to kind of just put this in there in terms of Ant saying maybe that he's not putting words in your mouth a bit, maybe, Ant, but not buying wholly into the hype of Bears Twitter and Fields. I think the fun with Fields is that someone of his frame and stature, I think you have to immediately think Cam Newton vibes, right? He runs over people like Cam does. He is that physical, but he's a bit more elusive as a runner as well. Like Cam just like to drop the shoulder and run over people, and Fields does that, but he can evade people too. Maybe not like DeAndre Swift, but it's not far away. And then as a passer, he's just better. deep ball throws especially. But I mean, his accuracy is just far better than Cam's ever was. Now, you're not designing a Panthers style offense with Cam as just a rushing quarterback who can throw a bit, which means that, you know, your win total might be a lot higher if you did design runs from the start. But I look at Fields and I think he's a better Cam Newton already. And if you wanted him to be MVP, you could probably try and make that happen. You keep that running offense, you load up on offensive line, you get a really good blocking tight end, and you go, right, gotta work. Try and stay healthy for 17 games, and you might be ending up with the MVP. As it is, you're trying to build a quarterback who's going to be a good QB for 10 years by developing his arm right now. That's what I see, Ant, and that's why Bears fans are excited. That's
oh no, I get it. So before we do this, Fields was my QB1 in that draft. I wanted him here. I loved the dual threat quarterback, and you know I always wanted him over the rest. And I was kind of gutted when he went there. But like I say, it's you see things with players, but all you see, and I get with Fields, the hype is there because Chicago's got its quarterback at last. But you do have to check the level field of where he's at the minute as well, because it is all praise at the moment. But he's not a fully rounded player, so it's just trying to find out where he's at currently. He's a very good quarterback, and I've no doubt he will be a very good one, but you just have to find out where they're actually at as opposed to seeing the highlight reels all the time.
There was one pertinent question which came out from the chat from two different people at the same time, which was talking about his progression from week 1 till now. Because, and I think we talked about it 7 weeks ago, Jack, but just to reiterate it, from like a few weeks in, there was talk of maybe they're not sold on Fields, maybe Fields is going to be traded, and then things have really come on. And two people in the chat both said, what has changed? Like, why has the change happened? Why has he progressed? What have the coaches done differently for him? And we touched on it before, but what do you think the coaches have done or Fields has done to really come to this point? Because it's not long ago that we were like, oh, the deadline's coming up. Maybe Fields could go for a low 1. And I mean, that you're dreaming about that now. You know, everyone else in the league is like, yeah, maybe 2 firsts and maybe a bit more, you know?
I think the biggest difference that we've seen, and it's a great question, goes back to Getsy. You know, I think what we witnessed in the last couple of years was the just incessant attempt to fit a square peg into a round hole, an inability in previous regimes to take a look at the players on the field and put those players in a position to be successful. That's what was lacking. Whereas I do feel like going back a little bit to Luke Getsy is I think he has shown a flair to be able to design and scheme an offense. And maybe that was a coinciding factor where both Luke Getsy came to a bit of a realization about Justin Fields' play set and abilities. And then we saw Justin Fields meet the moment. So really the thing that I think sparked it, and again, I want to avoid, I mean, you guys saw it. Justin Fields has a phenomenal arm. He only runs out of necessity. He was a fantastic passer of the football in college. I have zero doubts that he could be an excellent, pocket quarterback if he needs to be, and eventually will develop to be that one. But I think what sparked it was there was a good 3 to 4 to 5 designed runs for him. You know, when that shift began, and that seemed to catapult him. Honestly, it began to put him, I think, in a little bit better of a position of confidence. It got some momentum going with the offense. So then they could shift into, again, that ground attack, some play action passing, getting him outside the pocket, having him complete some passes, more and more confidence. And that really has built ever since.
I'm going to go through some of the stuff that I haven't gone through already in terms of stats and all that sort of stuff, which may provide context to what we're talking about, or because of the injuries, may throw some spotlight on some of the players that are actually going to be playing in this game. Because when you talk about the fact that, you know, Sanborn isn't playing, Herbert isn't playing, Mooney isn't playing, these are guys we profiled 7 weeks ago, and now they're not playing. So even though it was only 2 months ago that we were here talking about this, in some ways it's a very, very different game coming. So I'm going to do it justice by trying to go all the way through with this. And just as a game overview, in the betting, the Bears are 11-5. That makes it about plus 220, if I'm right in converting that into American. I'm not the best at doing fractional to American odds, but Lions are 11-4 on. I think that's minus 180 or something like that. Lions 6-point favourites, over under 52.5. Injury report: Jeremy Reisman of Pride of Detroit reports that on Thursday, Josh Reynolds, Logan Stenberg, Kirby Joseph, and Josh Woods were back at training, but not practicing. Centre Frank Ragnow, and as Ant pointed out in our Discord, he's unlikely to have a practice pretty much all season for the rest of the year, but he'll probably play. Coyote Awashika, the guard, and safety Deshaun Elliott all did not return. For the Bears on Wednesday, Claypool and St. Brown did not practice, and Dante Pettis limited with an ankle. So that wide receiver core already down on its luck, not looking too great. Also limited Andrew Brown, the defensive tackle, Justin Jones, the defensive tackle, Sterling Weatherford, the player that Ant was so high on in the draft.
Ryan,
beg your pardon, sorry. Trayvon Wesco, the tight end, Cody Whitehair, the guard. That would be a big loss as well if he can't go, but he'll probably be fine. And then Tevin Jenkins is back. He was out last week. Is that right? Yeah.
Correct. Yep. He's missed the last 2 games. He had what looked to be a scary neck injury. They had to immobilize him, full out cart him off the field, and so it's been a best case scenario. And he has been our best lineman, so it's great to have him back.
And he missed the first game between us, didn't he? I think he was a late injury addition to that one.
I believe that's correct.
The best lineman that you guys have had by some distance, even though he also was almost traded at some point during the start of this season.
What happened with him?
You know, I don't think everything has been revealed. I read an athletic article recently that gave me the perception that, you know, there were a few guys, Jalen Johnson included, Tevin Jenkins, who weren't quite buying in. You know, I think anytime you have a new organization and you get a new, you know, boss or CEO that comes in all hell-bent to put in whatever like his new program or her new program is, there's always going to be people that are sitting back there going, yeah, I don't know, maybe bullshit. It seemed like perhaps that Tevin Jenkins wasn't overly happy with the system. He wasn't overly happy with his position. He was, you know, they sat him down basically, and it doesn't appear that there was a mental health issue. It doesn't appear that there was anything going on physically with him. And then they moved him to guard, and he has thrived. He's embraced it. Boy, have you guys seen? He's a pancaker. Just an absolute road grader, one of those guys who plays nasty in a way that you just love. So back to the original question, it's still a little bit murky, but it sounds like it was pretty much just a, hey man, get on board. And I think he's gotten on board.
Yeah, completely turned it around. I mean, justifying the trade up, because it was 2 trade ups, wasn't it, last year? So yeah, justifying the move because he's been absolutely terrific. PFF's grades, 64.6 overall, that's 31st for the Bears, 70.4 on offense, that's 21st, and 49.2 on defense is 32nd in the NFL. Per Football Outsiders, overall, instead of 31st by PFF, they're 29th by Football Outsiders, minus 21.3% on offense, minus 6.9% is 23rd, and the defense, 14.2% is 32nd again. Special teams, about there or thereabouts, minus 0.2% is middle of the pack, 16th overall. Quarterback Justin Fields, 185 completions on 297 attempts, at 62.3% completion rate, 2,167 yards, 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, passer rating 88.3, QBR 55.5, on the ground 150 for 1,011 yards and 8 touchdowns. Can he get the record? It surely can't be too far away. Maybe will happen in this game. Who knows? It maybe could. PFF grade of 72.7. Other offensive weapons in this game, the RB1 now, and it has been, I guess, the whole time, but I really feel like Herbert was eating into him, but David Montgomery is still the guy. 114 carries, 650 yards, that's 4 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns, PFF grade of 68.7. Leading receiver, if he plays, is Equanimeous St. Brown. 18 catches on 34 targets, 300 yards, 1 touchdown, 6 carries as well for 54 yards, PFF grade 64.3. And the tight end Cole Kmet, we heard he has a rebound year, 44 catches on 61 targets, 460 for 5 touchdowns and a PFF grade of 66.6. Other good grades, Tevin Jenkins has a grade of 80, the guard, and Braxton Jones a tackle 76.5. guys struggling. There's not too many on offense that we haven't mentioned. Dante Pettis 54.3, but he's actually come on a bit, I think, down the stretch. In terms of efficiency on offense, 85 of 198 on third down, 42.9% is 7th in the NFL, and I really think that speaks to how well Justin Fields has done in situational play. Fourth down percentage is 38.1, 8 completions of 8 conversions on 21 attempts is 29th, and in the red zone, pretty efficient. 26 touchdowns on 47 trips, 55.3% and 14th. The fact that it's Equanimeous St. Brown, Jack, really just speaks volumes. Now, obviously, we're very familiar with the St. Brown family, but this is a guy who was cut by the Packers. I'm not dreaming there. Cut by a Packers team that was struggling for wide receivers, shall we say, to say the least. And he is, if he goes, maybe wide receiver 1. I know that there's another person who's a recent draft pick who might have a say in that. But in terms of at least receiving yards, he's the leader in the clubhouse, and he's a speedy guy, but he's not bringing a huge amount, and he's not the best catcher, and that does hurt Justin Fields.
It does. Two things, I think. First of all, he's a fantastic run blocker. I mean, one of the reasons that we're leading the NFL in rushing is because that's been put as a premium, I think, from Getsy and the offense, is to find wide receivers and tight ends who are vicious run blockers. They use the term violent run blockers, and they are. Now, there's no way around what you are. That truly is like the Achilles heel. Like, who's athletic, who can go up and get the ball, who can gain separation, who is a playmaker. And I don't know what to say other than you're just looking at a room full of guys that I think Poles took a flyer on guys like Harry and Pringle and Pettis and St. Brown, and it's been mildly successful. I don't know if you saw, there was a Twitter thread, a series of videos of drops and fumbles on third down, and it's been difficult. I think you're right. I think Pettis has been better than expected. Maybe earned himself a contract. He's been our punt returner, and he's been solid, very dependable. And I think on offense, he's proven to contribute a bit. I mean, it's either Kmet. It's been a little bit of Monty out of the backfield, but I mean, I don't think. I do like Monty. You're right. He's been the one mainly because he's the best pass blocking running back. And Herbert he's coming back off of injury. He got shut down by the Bills last week. So your guess is as good as mine. Can we trade St. Brown's? Would you be interested?
No.
I could give you like a bag of balls. How about a bag of balls? And we'll give you our St. Brown and we'll take yours.
No.
No. How about compliments? I could just effusively compliment your intelligence and good looks. No?
Well, let's see how hard you try first.
I wouldn't do it either, man.
I'll judge it by how hard you try.
I wouldn't do it either. I saw like last year, it was up and coming, and he is just so fast and tough, and he's excellent.
Yeah, that family, they're driven, they're determined. He's just something else. Brad Holmes seems to find these players who are they've got the right attitudes. It's never good enough. They can be as good as they want, but they can always do better, and they always strive to do better. But just, Matt's been talking about your offense there. There's one guy I'm very intrigued about. They said that Justin Fields got very little help from the team last year in terms of the draft, but pick 168 seems to have come through for you. You seem to have found potentially a left tackle all the way down there in Braxton Jones. He's been quite impressive, and it's not often you'll find a guy that late in a draft who will just slot in and play left tackle to at least a good degree. Now, I guess, you probably are running sort of a run-heavy scheme, so it does help him and how he plays, but he doesn't seem to have been bad in the pass protection side either. Has he got sort of a legitimate chance of being a left tackle, or will he sort of move when they go for like a premium pick and put a left tackle in? What's been the story with him? Because he's been uber impressive so far.
He's played every snap. You're right. He was drafted in the fifth or sixth round. I think the fifth round out of a small school. I believe he's given up just 6 sacks all year. Last week he was our highest graded player from PFF. His run blocking was a bit higher than his pass blocking for that particular game. He's extremely willing to learn and like open and honest about the ways in which he can improve. I think it's wait and see. Whether or not he becomes the standard for us at left tackle. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys that's the premium position. So if they're able to upgrade there in some significantly meaningful way, fine. then you've got Braxton Jones to go ahead and plug in at another spot. We've got plenty of room to improve on the offensive line. So to have Jenkins and to have Braxton Jones play as well as they have, we're on our way. And so yeah, I've been impressed. Some people think that maybe he is a bit overhyped because he's the best or one of the best of a really shitty line. I don't agree. I think a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, and he's proven to be I think a highly competent left tackle for Justin Fields. Right? You've got your franchise quarterback, and you're willing to put a rookie out there at left tackle. Doesn't that say something about him alone? I mean, that's big.
Well, that's why I was asking. It's like you don't find guys there who just slot in at left tackle and play to the degree that he's done. So, yeah, he is legit. Then he will be part of that line potentially, a front five going forward.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Steve, any questions for Jack on the Bears offense?
I was kind of going to move on along to defense, but I don't know if we've got any more offensive stuff to talk about.
I mean, I guess so. I was going to move on to it when we talk about Buffalo, Chicago, but just Velus Jones, obviously the recent pick I allude to, the wide receiver. He's done well on special teams, hasn't really broken out yet offensively, but then last week he had that kind of huge catch late on, crossing route left to right, deep ball from Fields. The throw, the catch, and the route were excellent. What has Velus Jones done so far?
That was the subject of a heated 40-minute debate on our last podcast. He's been disappointing. He missed a lot of training camp. He cost us a couple of games with fumbles late in the game, especially on punt returns. He had his best game last week. I believe he had 2 catches for 52 yards with a long of 44. He had 4 returns for upwards, I believe, of 129 kick return yards, and I think his best was 28 yards. It was a solid game. It was a step in the right direction for Velus Jones. He's been given a ton of criticism, especially for those who don't believe that Poles is navigating the ship in the right direction. They thought Brisker and Gordon were good picks. They didn't like the Velus Jones Jr. pick. I'm on board. I feel like, again, old Bears regime, in my opinion, takes a guy like Velus Jones and ships him. Maybe he doesn't even make the roster next year. New Bears regime puts their arm around his shoulder, takes him into the film room, gets him out on the practice field. They drafted him for a reason. His speed, his size, his strength, his big playability. I think the Bears are going to be patient with him. And I still think there's a lot of potential upside for Velus Jones. I was saying, even if he has the ability to run slants and to go vertical, I'm not saying he's like A.J. Brown, but similar to what A.J. Brown did, his yards after the catch in Tennessee were excellent. Even if he becomes your kick returner, that's one less position, one less spot you have to fill for next year on a roster where there are lots of spots to fill. So I think he makes the roster. I'd love to see him continue to get better offensively, but I feel like last week I was personally very pleased with his performance. It was better, and it's been rocky, to put it mildly.
The chat have countered your trade offer, by the way. Justin Fields and Equinemius St. Brown for Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, see, I thought that flipped it too much the other way.
Yeah. Hey, was St. Brown the one who knows the names of every single guy that got drafted ahead of him?
Yeah, yes. He has a chip on his shoulder larger than his head.
I love it. I took him in every fantasy draft because of Hard Knocks and watching how motivated that dude was. This is really cool.
And now he's added all the guys who got in the Pro Bowl in front of him on that list as well. So
That's pretty cool.
it's going to get worse.
That's pretty badass.
Right, let me go through the defensive players, and then maybe Steve can have a question for you. Linebacker, the guy starting at the moment who has the most, in fact, most tackles overall for your team is Nicholas Morrow. He had an interception, I think, last week against the Bills.
He did.
2 passes defended, 103 tackles, 72 of which solo, 10 tackles for loss, PFF grade of 57.6. Jaquan Brisker is your leading sack man. 1 interception, 5 passes defended, a forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, 4 sacks, 86 tackles, 62 of which solo, 5 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, all sacks. PFF grade 66.4. Leading interceptor is Kyler Gordon. He got 1 last week against the Bills, which was a bit of a gimme. 3 interceptions, 6 passes defended, a forced fumble and a fumble recovery, 64 tackles, 49 solo, 2 tackles for loss, PFF grade 53.3. No other players, apart from what I've kind of said, no one really has had a great season, at least by PFF grades. In terms of the people I've not listed who've had iffy grades, Angelo Blackson and Justin Jones, both interior defensive linemen, 33.7, 43.2 respectively. Travis Gibson, the edge player, 47.9. Mike Pennell, also interior defensive lineman, 48.9. Armon Watts, interior defensive lineman, 49.1. Seems to be a theme, Jack, there. In terms of efficiency, 3rd down, 90 conversions allowed on 181, 49.7, 32nd in the NFL. 4th downs, 6 of 14, 42.9% is 7th. Red zone, 33 touchdowns allowed on 51 attempts, 64.7%, 28th. So inefficient on 3rd down and defensive line struggling. Steve, I believe you had a question, perhaps.
Yeah, so we obviously talked quite a bit about Luke Getsy, but the kind of other addition that kind of came with Matt Eberflus was Alan Williams. So like this is like a vastly experienced guy, and he's really like Matt Eberflus's guy from his time at the Colts. I think he like the defensive backs coach at the Colts for quite a few years. I mean, the task of Matt Nagy built his sort of small success on the Bears defense. The Bears are obviously a team, monsters of the Midway. They're known for their defense. How far has that defensive rebuild come under Alan Williams? Are you kind of pleased? Where do you kind of see him in terms of like his style? What are Bears fans sort of enjoying it, or is it still a lot of work to do?
I would say that he was the coordinator that we were most concerned about the last time we spoke, and even halfway through the season, there seemed to be a complete, ineptness to be able to adjust at halftime. We were for a while not giving up hardly any points or touchdowns in the first half, and leading the league in some categories, and then there seemed to be no second half adjustments. I think that's improved greatly. I mean, I think you guys alluded to it earlier. The Bears defense punched way above their weight class against the Eagles and against the Bills. In both games, Williams schemed in a way that had Jalen Hurts on his heels, the entire Philly offense on their heels, and so likewise made Josh Allen and the Bills' offense pretty darn uncomfortable for 30 minutes or so of football. And you read out some of those names. I mean, they're not names. So in that regard, I have been especially impressed with the fundamental soundness of this defense. Just as a for instance, you talk about force players or edge players whose job it is to turn the ball carrier back into his friends, into the pursuit. Very frequently, and let me know if you notice this in the game, very frequently you will see our defenders with their sideline shoulder free, making sure that they are turning ball carriers back to the inside. Those types of things, right? There's no such thing as a fine detail in football. All that minutia matters. I've been very impressed with that. One last thing, Alan Williams, again, was talking today, and he said when he was sitting with the defensive backfield way back in August with the defensive backs, he said to them, listen, every one of you is a professional football player and supposed to be one of the best at this in the world. The defensive backfield is the most often injured position on the defense. So we expect every one of you in this room to be prepared to play tomorrow. And so that, I don't know, that just really struck me. And I feel like that's come to fruition on the field in the way that they have played. And again, progression. I mean, look at what they did with Kyler Gordon at the beginning of the year. Just absolutely threw him to the wolves. Had him play nickel, had him play corner, and he was getting, I mean, absolutely boat raced. And now he's become a key figure, a key feature in our defensive backfield. I've been impressed. Now they did give up, what was it, 280 some yards rushing last week, and almost two 100-yard rushers and 3 touchdowns. So, I'm not trying to suggest that they're something that they're not, but given the factors that we've discussed, and not making excuses for them, but quite literally looking at a roster that is what it is, better than expected, in my opinion.
It's odd to see this style of Bears defense because for years you've been the sack masters. The defensive line, the front seven has always ruled, and we know better than ever. We've been hassled and hurried by them all the time. But this year, you don't have that. The sack counts aren't high, the quarterback hits aren't high. This is not a traditional Chicago defense, but they're getting a lot of takeaways in there. What's changed fundamentally between, because this is a completely Bears defense. As I say, it's completely different. It used to be the sack masters. It used to be the front seven. Now it seems to be the secondary. Is it more scheme based? Is it talent based? What's sort of gone on in that transition from the defense?
Well, I mean, you'll see it. Our defensive line is unable to get pressure, and I think that just has to do with personnel. Gibson hasn't been as good as we hoped he would be. Justin Jones has maybe been as good or a little bit better, but doesn't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. The fact that Jaquan Brisker has sacks for us. He's a good edge rusher, isn't he? He's good with his hand on the. Oh wait, no, he's a safety. Never mind. But the fact that he has the most sacks is it's very telling, right? And we've even tried to find ways to bring pressure in the last couple of games, as I think you all will see, in this upcoming matchup. I think it's talent. I think it's Brisker. I mean, think about it. We're maybe a D lineman or two away from having an elite defensive backfield when healthy. If Eddie Jackson's healthy, if Jalen Johnson's healthy, we've got Kyler Gordon, you've got Brisker. You're pretty close. And I'll just tell you, in terms of the takeaways, I thought, they talk about the sheer amount of reps that they attempt in practice when it comes to ball punches. I mean, I think they even go down to the point of counting the amount of ball punches that they have in practice, which is kind of back to an old Lovie Smith type of mentality, really. And Matt, you weren't too far off. Williams admitted that Kyler Gordon was completely out of position on the interception that he got, but he did credit him for using the technique that they taught, which was high pointing the ball and being able to bring it down, and it was still a pick. So
yeah. So talking about that game, just to give some context to what's been happening, because the best evidence of what's going to happen is the last game, right? We're hoping that's not true, but it might be true. That specific interception into double coverage, massively overthrown. But in that situation, you do see defensive backs in man not turning around, not trying to face the ball, and he did that. And I mean, he didn't even really need to jump; it was just kind of into his hands. But he made the catch, which you do see a lot of DBs just completely whiff on. So credit to him for that. And at least at the start of this game, you guys, and you say that the defensive line doesn't get much pressure. You put the Buffalo offensive line under a heck of a lot of pressure. You drew 2 holding calls early because you were able to create some havoc in that offensive line, which I was actually quite impressed by. Eventually, as the game wore on, that kind of wore off a little bit, as you kind of alluded to, with the amount of rushing production that they had. What else do we have in here? The first touchdown that Allen threw, he locked onto his receiver, and you guys were running zone, but the cornerback and the safety in cover 2 just stood there as a receiver kind of hit a gap wide in the end zone and just let him be. I was blown away.
That was surprising.
Yeah, just blew me away how inept that was in that one play. But it's just one play, right? It happens.
Right. It's a great point. I was going to say, I don't think that is indicative of their overall play. There's been just a lot of instances where you've seen our defensive backs running stride for stride right on the hip with wide receivers and then getting pass deflections. Again, better than expected. Now, whether or not we can hang, with your crew, I mean, that's questionable, but we've been better than expected,
We'll
honestly.
see. I mean, the thing is, so that you had the goal line set that Buffalo ran afterwards. So you had a punt, it got downed at the 2, and then they muffed the snap, or Allen muffed the snap off the first play. They actually ended up recovering it back at the 1, but then 2 really nice plays when they're backed up. It really made me think actually this defensive line is better than you'd expect, especially early on in the game. I thought that the defensive backfield showed a bit too much respect to the Buffalo receivers. Obviously, you're trying to take away a certain Stephon Diggs in coverage, and that helped a little bit, but I think a little bit too much respect shown there. Seemed very reactive on end arounds and sweeps, which actually the Lions like to run, so I hope that we don't do that too much because it seems you guys can cotton on to that pretty quickly. Play action pass seemed to be a weakness, kind of buying that a bit too easily, and Allen on naked bootlegs just having all the world to throw. And then the rushing touchdowns just really killed you with Singletary rushing for half the field, James Cook for a 30-yarder, both I think out of shotgun, both handed off inside zone runs, and pulling linemen and them kind of fencing people off seemed to be a bit of a struggle throughout the game. Is that something you've seen throughout the year, like kind of pulling linemen and specifically that sort of offense that doesn't say run power? They just kind of pull the right guard out to the left-hand side and run inside zone through that gap and you can't do anything about it? Or is it just that one game and Buffalo are just damn good at doing that?
I mean, it's a great question. Listening to Flus after last week's game, he's very straightforward in a way that I enjoy. And you're right; those three, I think there were three instances where we just got gashed in the run game. And I just think about it, similar to the way Flus did. He's like, well, you've got your D linemen have a gap, your linebackers have a gap, and if you've got a one high safety, he has a gap too. And if everybody is responsible, assignment and alignment does their job in their gap, then you don't get gashed. But I think what we've been kind of talking about as a theme here is, and I didn't watch the all 22, but I mean, it's not hard to imagine the Buffalo Bills' offensive linemen making sure that our D linemen, who just aren't the caliber, to match, owning them. You know what I'm saying? So I think there was a lot of gap breakdown for a very distinct reason because that's like a championship team on its way, I think potentially to another Super Bowl, and we aren't. I mean, I really just think, what I mean. If we were to watch the All 22, we'd see a three technique, and we'd see interior linemen getting moved off their gaps and handled.
Moving to the offensive side of the ball in this game, very much a run first offense. I think the first 3 plays were runs. They were pitches, they were inside and outside zone runs. It doesn't seem to be any one thing that you kind of do as a staple. It's just whatever the situation calls for. There's designed QB runs in there. Shovel passes by the quarterbacks, basically an extension of the run game, but maybe to tight ends at that point. And then once you do that, you're building in fake tosses. Fields can make all the passes as well, but it needs to be well blocked. The offensive line seemed to struggle a little bit against the Buffalo pass rush. And you alluded to it before in terms of what Buffalo did to shut them down, but running the outside linebackers outside of the defensive ends who are already playing contain really seemed to mean that the Fields design runs were countered very effectively. And drops just seemed to hurt you guys generally. Pettis and Komet were in particular kind of guilty of some really bad ones, and then the Velus Jones catch, which we mentioned earlier. And the thing about that Velus Jones catch is it was deep, and Fields got it out quickly. Like, that wasn't a sort of well blocked, lots of time to throw sort of thing. He dropped back and got it out of there, and it went for 44 yards or whatever it was. It was something that you see from, well, frankly, what I would have regarded as better passing quarterbacks than Justin Fields in terms of time to throw. Because when he's rushed, when he's hurried, that's where he's struggled before because he likes to hold on to the ball. But that was the sort of pass where I thought, no, he's got it in his arsenal. He just needs to kind of practice that a little bit more. So,
And I think Jones was he was double covered. I mean, so that and that right, you should give Ryan some shit because he was dogging that play because he doesn't like Velus Jones Jr. But I'm like, what else do you want, right? You got your speedster wide receiver running a deep route. right? He had to adjust to the ball just a little bit. It was a great throw, a great catch, 44 yards in double coverage. But to me, that's like that's a huge win, man.
Fellas, any thoughts on the kind of key matchups to this game? We've given the context, we've talked about last week, we've talked about what's happened in the past, but let's focus on this game in particular. We've talked about Fields, which I guess is the real key to this entire game, because we know Goff's probably going to be okay, fairly good. He's going to get 300 yards because he seems to do that every week these days. The run game, it's not been doing particularly well. Yeah, maybe that's one big question. Do you fellas think that the Lions' offensive line, the run game, can actually get right against this Bears team? Because for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and maybe for a couple of those, it was our passing offense is efficient. So let's just get away from that because we don't have to run the ball. But then when we've needed to, we haven't got it done. This Bears team really struggled against the run recently. Do you think that we can get it done here? Because maybe that's the key to the game.
You've got to, you would hope so, because at the end of the day, we have a top five offensive line unit. I reckon the right guard position is becoming a real issue now, which is a shame. You've got to bring Logan back in this weekend. You've got to run the ball on them. Bring in your best run blocking right guard and just do that. But without being disrespectful to Chicago, my 3 first-round picks that are on there, Jonah Jackson's on there, I would expect them to make gaps against this defensive line. I just would, because it's the one area they've not really invested in at this moment in time. They've invested in the secondary, it's really good. It's investment in linebacker, but this is not the Chicago front seven we've seen of recent years. And, you're at home, you're in a high-pressure situation. This is why you pay first-round picks to get guys on the line to come in and perform there. So I would absolutely 100% expect them to. But if I'm Chicago, I just do what the Panthers did to us. I stack the box up to high heaven and force us to go through the middle. And we've not proven that we can deal with it so far, which is weird because we've got the run blocking wide receivers, we've got the run blocking tight ends. They can all run block. It just seems schematically they've not figured a way to do it out. People find a way to box us in, but you're talking about the consequences, the stakes in this game, the pressures, the matchup on paper. I 100% expect us to be able to do something in this game, and if you can't, then you've really got to start asking questions. Because these last 6 weeks, it's been dicky. I think a few weeks we've just been picking on bad secondaries, and we've not needed to run it. But this isn't one of them. You ain't going to start airing it out on all these guys this week. You've got to establish the run first. So it's a matchup I think is highly favourable to us, and we need to exploit it big time.
Steve?
Although in the previous game, I think in the previous game, that was the game that Swift had 6 carries for 6 yards and Jamal Williams only got like 59 yards. So we didn't do it last time. And that's my worry is the run game seems to be going backwards. I mean, I think my big thing is like no one knows what Lions team are going to turn up. Like this is the problem. We don't know what kind of DeAndre Swift's going to turn up. Jamal Williams has been like super impressive 1 minute, like red zone threat, but also, penetrating in terms of some good carries during the game. But he seems to be kind of running on empty. So I just don't know what kind of like Lions offense is going to turn up.
Jack, what do you reckon? Do you think the Bears, because this is a chance for the Bears defensive line to really step up. You've got the blueprint from last week. The Panthers really ran it down our throats and didn't allow anything in the run game. Do you think that you can get right here?
Well, here's what I would be surprised if it wasn't close. Again, we've spoken about this previously, or at least for a good portion of the game. I feel like the Bears do a really nice job scheming, and I think that they put a nice game plan into effect both offensively and defensively out of the gate. So I could see y'all maybe being a little frustrated early on because you're as you mentioned, your offensive line and I think all of your weapons on offense are far superior to us. I wouldn't be surprised though if again, and sorry if it's repetitive, but I think over time it's just there's no way for us to combat a lack of talent, and so It's like, I've said it the last couple of weeks, like gritty is cool. You know what I mean? Like, hey, great grit out there. You guys have no quit in you, and that's awesome. But over time, I think the Bears get worn down and cannot match up to, you know, um, the types of dynamic wide receivers and position players that you have, especially on offense. Yeah, I just can't see it happening.
I think
Really
it's just
interesting to
that
see the snap count for Jameson Williams this week
as
because he's been very very limited. Apparent, I did read something this week that said the turf at the Panthers field was like appalling, and they just didn't want to risk too many snaps with him on a field that was in such bad condition. So maybe this week things will be changed, but you would think with Jameson Williams, St. Brown, DJ Chark back in form, we've got to perform, and we should be looking at I know Brisker's had a really good rookie season, but we've got to be looking to get after the Bears both in the air and on the ground.
You know what I'd do, and I think this is a bit different to normal, but I'd move away from the whole jumbo package stuff that we do because I feel like it's not really working at this moment in time. What I'd do, I'd dare the Chicago defense to try and come up and stop us. I'd line up JMO and DJ at the same time. I'd have Amon Ra there, and I'll say, right, you stack that box and risk Jared Goff throwing on you with these three guys. You want to leave them one-on-one, that's fine. Give your running back some more room to work with. Keep those safeties deep. Keep those linebackers 5 yards back. Just stop them from stacking the box on you. I think you have to go uber aggressive and trust your linemen to win on a one-on-one situation, because I think this lining up two tight ends, the big jumbo sets, it gets crowded, and we just don't seem to be able to find a way to run a ball through because we don't do hitting the edge outside the tackle running unless we use motion, which we don't really use very often. So for me, I'd be sticking all my offensive weapons out there, and I would dare Chicago to try and come up and stack the box and then beat them one-on-one at the line. That is what I'd be doing.
Great minds think alike. I think that there was something I was going to come on to later, actually, but I think one of the things, obviously, we've heard about DeAndre Swift in terms of just he can't break tackles. That's not his game. He's an elusive guy. We're running these jumbo sets, and there's loads of people around him. That doesn't make any sense. And what does Jared Goff do well? Well, he came from spread offenses. He likes wide receivers being on the field, get the ball out quickly or hand it off. And we've not been doing that to him. And to his credit, Jared Goff has done very well not in that system. But line up in 1 personnel or 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers or 4 on the field at all times, spread it out, shotgun formations, Swift in the backfield, and hand it off to him every now and again and tell him to run round these guys if the defensive linemen come. And if they don't, Goff make a quick decision and throw to one of these guys, or hope that your offensive lineman can have the best of it and throw deep. I really think that is a route to victory for the Lions, for sure.
Why you drafted him?
Last game, has it? Goff has thrown no interceptions, I think.
No,
in the last 4 games, I mean, he's 5 games, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's been very good. I mean, I think you just know that he has almost no elusiveness, right? So I mean that does create an advantage for the defense when in the past 2 weeks we've looked at Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, where that's a whole other facet you have to prep for. So I do think if there's a bit of an advantage for the Bears defense, they can at least put all their eggs in one basket when it comes to the run game and hopefully try to stop your running backs from running and not put much, onus on Goff being elusive or creating secondary plays when the first play breaks down.
And the thing is, that is exactly what the Jets and Jaguars did against us. They kept stacking the box and they got touched through the air because they kept daring us to do, this is what they do, they run it. They're not going to keep throwing it on us all day. But we did. We didn't need to run the balls on those games because it just kept going. And that's why Jameson has to be in this side. I don't care if he doesn't get reps or anything. You have drafted him to be your deep field threat. He is the reason that a defense is going to get stretched, that they can't box you in. And to not use him, even as just a decoy, at least have the threat of him out there. You've got DJ who's fully healthy. You've got 2 bona fide deep field threats now. Have them out there. I would fancy either of those 2 to go up. I know Brisker and Gordon are good, but if that's what it comes to, I'll do it. Because I know Goff can do it, and he's been very safe with the ball. So have them both out there. Don't don't start running the two tight end sets again and that. It's not working. Let's move away from it.
A little bit of an elephant in the room for the Lions fans, and Dan Pasco's brought it up on defense. We haven't really spoken about it on the show, and Jack, you may not be aware of this, but it transpired after the game last week where we got torched by the Panthers, who I think most people know are a little bit one-dimensional. Darnold is not the best passer of the ball. They want to bully you on the ground. And the Lions did not stack the box once last week. There was not one snap where they had more than 6 linemen in there or something, or six men.
We didn't play 3 linebackers.
Yeah.
We just played 2.
Absolutely. So Dan Pask says, we ran a ton of nickel last week. Yeah, well, that's where we're at now. Didn't blow the box, and we missed Deshaun as the strong safety. He's probably out for this game, and probably out for the rest of the season, to be honest.
Is that your rookie safety that's come on so strong?
No, he was a free agent signing.
He's from Baltimore.
He was a core special teamer at Baltimore,
okay,
and he's come on really strong for us.
Rookie safety has been amazing.
Big miss for us, Deshaun. And Steve especially, just because of Lions fans. What do you think we're going to do to this Bears defense? Because when the Panthers come along and you don't stack the box, you might say that is just poor game management. But you might say, okay, we think that we're going to be able to take care of business here because we've shut down everyone else who's good against good running the ball, doing this defense. And it didn't work in this game. Do you think that they're going to run a similar defense and say to David Montgomery, if you beat us with your legs, then fair enough? Or Justin Fields, if you beat us with your legs, fair enough? Or do you think we'll see a shift and see more defensive linemen and more people in the box?
You've got to box up. You're against a much better quarterback, plainly and simply. And we saw in the first game between us and the Bears, they were very indisciplined early, keeping the edge. I remember the Hutch one especially. I think we missed Fields on like 3 tackles on one play, and you didn't get at him. And it was a theme of the day. And on the edge, they weren't disciplined. They didn't keep it in check. But as the game progressed and they went on, they got better at it. They seemed to learn how to play against him. And in the fourth quarter, when it really mattered, when you're trying to get them off the field, they did, and they sort of adjusted as time went by to it. So I would fully expect them to roll out similar again, and we did stack up in that game, and I think you have to. And, you know, the good thing for us is we kind of do have those outside linebacker types to be able to play in this. Houston will be in there. I think he might be huge in this game purely because of the speed aspect of his game, but, you know, I think you've got to play exactly the same way you did before. You can't have one line of defense against these guys here. The Bears the Bears run blocking on that offensive line is really good. We say the offensive line's bad, but that's when it comes to passing. When it comes to running the football, they're good. So you've got to give it help. And if you don't, they'll not even need to use Justin Fields. And we don't want to be in a situation like that. You kind of got to put the onus on him a little bit. And as Jack's been saying, make him a bit uncomfortable. You know, hem him in. But yeah, I do not want to see that look again ever. It just is quite obvious. If you're playing like that, you've got to have very smart linebackers with the gap placement, with the toughness. And all linebackers have been good this year, but they're young rookie guys and they got exposed. The defensive line, young rookie guys got exposed. You don't have the experience in the team to play that way, in my humble opinion. So you've got to stack it more, but we have outside linebackers we can use.
Let's say it doesn't matter schematically what we do. We have to tackle better than last week, because last week was probably worst or second worst week for missed tackles. So many crappy arm tackles. We really missed Deshaun Elliott. It was just not good enough. There seemed to be a lack of focus. I think just talking about Dan Campbell, because we've not really mentioned him. I was quite impressed with Campbell in how he was talking, because he was doing that thing where he was actually confronting playoff talk. And so many, we're so sick of the whole Belichick, we move on to Houston, we move on to Philadelphia, just not answering the question. And Dan Campbell's he was talking playoffs. And we get this in the UK, Jack, with soccer managers who, even though, people are way ahead in the league. They refuse to talk about, Champions League places or cup finals because it's like, no, we've got to just play it game by game. But Campbell was kind of quite vocal in talking about the playoff chances. But then Carolina happened, and I'm like, oh shit, maybe it's a really bad idea to talk about the playoffs. Maybe you just need to do a Belichick and go, well, we go on to Green Bay. Like, what do you guys think?
Obviously worked for Belichick. I mean, don't you think there's like a decent amount of validity to suggest that you look at the opponent that's in front of you, and you say we're going to put all our eggs into that basket and watch that basket, and then and then at the end we're going to take another look at where we're at in the playoff race, and then yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's probably very difficult and it's probably very enticing to look down the road, when we have had so much futility for so long. I get how that would be tantalizing, to be looking at a potential playoff spot. But I think you make a great point. Is it counterproductive when it comes to what's in front of us right now? I'm with you. I'm like, I don't like to hear the coach speak. I'd like, you know what I mean? It's kind of our world to be able to talk a little fan fiction and look down the road a little bit. But I get it from the perspective of a locker room and a coach when they take a Belichick approach.
It looked like
I think
we'd looked beyond Carolina to our detriment last week. It really, I mean, as any neutral watching it, I mean, we just were outplayed.
I mean, I don't 100% believe that. I think that on the day you came up against a team that had had their ass kicked the week before, embarrassed at home, and they came out with that intensity. They play like we do, and they came out with a great game plan, and I think it was an out coaching on the day, the way they schemed it, the run game, the plays. They saw the looks we were giving them on defense. They adjusted and they took advantage of it. I don't know whether it's 100% on the players, but sometimes you need a humbling. And like Dan Campbell said, it could be good for us in the long run because it's a young team and it was putting a pressure. I think this is the first ever game the Carolina won where we've been under pressure since Holmes and Campbell came here. Because last year was free year, and this year it's kind of you're clawing your way back from 1-6. You're miles off the playoffs. There's nothing there. This is the next of evolution of this team. It's now got to learn to deal with pressure games in December and January, which is a Detroit team hasn't done for years. So it just looked on the day, like I say, I don't know if they were overwrought. I just think the coach has got it a little bit wrong in our case. But this is the get right week. This is where you'll really learn about this team and just where it's at the minute because Chicago have nothing to lose, literally nothing. I don't think you even lose the draft spot if you win. So it's a case of they can wreck our season or hey, they're going for a number two, number one pick. It doesn't really matter. This is where we were last season when we were upsetting teams. Now, can this young team deal with that and get itself over the line? We don't know, but maybe last week might end up being a good thing if we win these last 2 weeks. Or if we win this one and then you go to Lambeau next week with the playoffs, you're in the best possible position.
Jack, I've got one question from you from the chat, and then maybe we can just go to score predictions, because I know that we've been going a little while. We've picked up a Canadian Rams fan who likes to watch us, and he has a question for you. He says, how did Khalil Herbert look in his first game back, and could he be an X factor in this game? I feel like the Bears are at their best when him and Fields are rolling, which I kind of alluded to earlier in terms of him maybe taking over that RB1 spot. I must admit, I didn't take a huge amount of notice of him on the field last week. What did you make of his comeback?
Well, to put it bluntly, he was completely shut down. Getsy attributes it to two things. One, his first game coming off an injury. I believe he missed a total of 5 weeks. And then secondarily, a stalwart Buffalo Bills defense. And that's what he basically attributed it to. I don't even know like what his stat line was. I don't think he had over 10 yards.
Six for seven.
6 carries.
Yeah,
6 for 7. So I don't know. I guess give him a game to get back and knock the rust off. I mean, he, as we talked about last time, he has shown himself to be the faster, more versatile back. He's great at playing behind his pads, and just lowering the boom on defenders. But he's also got an explosive step that I don't think Monty fully has. I like how Herbert hammers the line of scrimmage. I'm a little bit weary of what I see as some dancing with Montgomery. Don't get me wrong, I still think Montgomery's a great back. He's a great pass blocker. He fights for every yard. He really does. He's not an elite back, but he is a very good back. So it would be nice to get the 1-2 punch that we had with Herbert and Montgomery, because that was part of the reason why we put ourselves in a position to be one of the best rushing teams in the league. I don't have any reason to think that he won't get back into form. I just think perhaps that combination that Getsy alluded to of first game back, Buffalo Bills, top 6, top 5 defense, that didn't work well for him last week.
And score prediction for you, maybe you can paint a picture for us like Brendan did as to how you see this game going.
I do think that it will be similar to what Brendan said. I guess I would be surprised if either team got out ahead early on. I really would be. Just not the way Bears games have gone, and I do think they've set the tempo regardless of the team that they're facing. Again, both with the Eagles and the Bills, they did that, which was surprising, a pleasant surprise. I've got 35-28 Detroit. I do think it'll be a very similar game, perhaps, to the Bills game, in that it will be close until it's not. That's the way I see it transpiring.
Fellas, a picture needs to be painted by you as well. Steve?
I think it's gonna be like one touchdown close. The issue is, after last week, my kind of cautious optimism of how the season was progressing has been shaken by a really bad performance. Not just a bad performance, but a performance that was just so out of character with where we've been going. So I'm kind of nervous, and I think this is a Bears team that we should be able to put 10 to 12 points lead on, but I think it's going to be tighter than that. So I'm going to say maybe 35-29 Lions.
See, this is where sort of emotional me overrides rational me when it comes to this. But I look at this game very simply. The Chicago Bears are not going to be this bad again for a very long time. They are probably at the lowest ebb they're going to be. They're only going to get stronger. The free agency money next year, they've got a number 2 overall pick and they're able to trade that away. The assets are going to be there and they're going to start rebuilding again very soon. I think this team has to make a statement here. We are young, we are inexperienced, but we are growing as a team and we are ahead of where they are at the minute. And we have a very big carrot on the end of this stick, potentially. I want to go to Lambeau Field needing to get into the playoffs and the Packers needing the same. I want to put this team in the highest pressure situations to go out and win because it's how it'll develop. And I think this weekend we need to put a stamp down on this team. And I say I expect, I demand. I know I put on Twitter, I demand, but I do. I think this is the first time since those two took over, Holmes and Campbell, that I am expecting them to win. I am expecting a reaction similar to what the Panthers gave us last week after their humbling at the Steelers. When we lose games now, we come back strong afterwards. After the Bills game, we all wondered, will we crumble? No, we came back stronger. We learned our lessons. We played the Bears once already. We know how we need to do it. And I mean, just their injuries are huge, and we by and large are quite healthy. I think we are the better team right now. So I think it's going to be by 10 points. I will put it 27-17. I don't think we're going to roll 40 over them. I think that defense is too good to do that. But conversely, I would expect us to be able to keep their points down. We're at home. We do better there. So I'm saying about 27-17 Lions win. And then we go to Lambeau and what is going to be the most stressful 3 hours of our life if it's an all playoff affair and it's winner gets in. I don't think I can handle it.
If it gets there, I don't think it's winner gets in. I think winner has a shot. I think they're still going to need some help. So it's going to be even worse because you might win a really stressful game and still not get in, which is just the worst. Guy Utah on Twitch has subscribed to Tier 1 his second month. Appreciate you, man. He said, we overlooked the Panthers. there's certainly an argument there to say that we absolutely did. My thoughts on this game are not the same as any of yours. In terms of at least the points scored and the way the game this is going to go. Lest we forget that although the Bears, we were part of this losing streak that the Bears have had, they led by 14 as the fourth quarter started. And let that sink in.
Where are we going here, Matt? Where are we going here?
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable as to where this is going.
It was at their home,
and
we were only just on the road wins. It's hard to win in the NFC North on the road. It's very difficult to win, even with a good team. It's hard to win on the road.
Not at Detroit recently,
unless you're the Packers and you bribe the refs. But
yes, well, so this game is not going to be low scoring. 27-17 isn't scraping the barrel with what can happen in this game. Fields, Montgomery, Herbert, and how that Lions run defense played last week. I don't think the Lions are going to sort it out run D-wise. I think Fields is going to run over this team. I don't think the Lions are going to lose. I do think the Lions will win. But I do think the Bears get out to a lead, and by half-time, pants are brown. I'm just going to say that right now. I do think it's going to be...
Pants are brown or sun brown?
I think it's going to be one of those where we really go, oh man, is the season really over at halftime? I can see a 10-point, 12-point Bears lead at halftime, and we kind of bring it back.
This has just been mean, isn't it, Steve? He's wishing this on us. This is cruel.
I can see some sort of wacky shootout, like 45-40 or something, with both defenses just being terrible in this game. And actually, the Lions coming away from it thinking, okay, we won and we go to Lambeau with something on the line, but my God, we can't win in the playoffs playing like this. I do think that like last week's problems...
flagellation. This is awful.
That's almost like a Pyrrhic win, that is. There's no point. It's going to be like a Pyrrhic win if you have it your way.
I really think so. I really think it will be. I think we come out of this game feeling worse about our season than we do before it, even with a win.
Wow.
I've been good on these predictions this year, so don't at me if it goes badly. But
pretty sure you're not winning the prediction league at the minute. So
I called 10-7. I was the only one to call. No, actually, some people called 9 wins, didn't they?
No, most of us called 8, so most of us are correct. We're not going to get 10, so you've lost.
But hang on,
the rest of us are still in it.
If we go 9 wins, I'll be the only one that predicted a winning season, and we'd have had a winning season.
Well,
yeah, okay. Hold that thought then for a couple of weeks. Jack, do you want to shout out any? So you said about a show on Sunday that you guys may be doing for the review.
Yeah, we'll definitely record. We always record an after show. We just recently started, thanks to your help, especially to go live on YouTube. We did our first live YouTube show 2 weeks ago, and we had Bears legend Tom Waddle on the show, which was just, we went live and we had Waddle on the show. It's hard to fully describe. I mean, you guys can imagine having one of your Lions heroes on the show for the first time. It's just awesome. He's a great dude. So I will shout out Tom Waddle because he is just an amazing gentleman. And so we'll record our post game show. Hopefully, we'll be talking about a Bears victory after the game, and then shout out Ryan Dangle, who is the host of the Bear Down Chicago podcast, and then my co-hosts, who I was touting before the show as well. We saw Brendan, who's not only a co-host but also writes just some remarkable, product for Bears Wire. We've got Patrick Sheldon, who is kind of he pokes the bear a lot. He's super sarcastic. Some people like him on Twitter and some people don't, but he's kind of that guy, who can be very funny on Twitter. I enjoy him greatly. So that we've got him as well, Patrick Sheldon, and then Logan Bradley, who works for the betting facet of Fox Sports, and then also does some co-hosting with us as well.
So I've just put the link in the YouTube chat for Bear Down as they've just joined. YouTube. So please, guys, go and follow them, as if you heard from Jack and from Ryan before, and from Brendan. They're a great group of guys, and please go and give them your support. Dan Pask is in the chat just saying, one thing I believe the Bears and Packers were always going to play spoilers and play hard. Interestingly, beating our NFC opponents one after the other, we'd have our first playoff win since it was the NFC Central. Let's go Lions. I'm going to this game. I cannot wait. Dan, as the best Lions fan in the podcast universe, we wish you the best and bring home a win. You guys are getting some subs. I can see in the chat we've got some promises of subs. So, Jack, I hope that helps, because you guys obviously do some really great stuff. Our next episode on the main show is going to be on Monday for the Bears review show. Steve, sorry?
Unless we lose, and then we're boycotting.
I was just going to say, should we just take 30 seconds just to give our views on what's going to happen at Lambeau between the Vikings and the Packers on Sunday? Because it's kind of crucial. Any thoughts on that?
I can see it now. The Vikings are going to be leading by like 2 or something with a minute to go, and then they're going to get screwed by a referee call, which is going to give the Packers the ball, and they're going to hit a walk-off field goal, and then they're going to scab their way through to the last week where they can potentially get in. You know, that's what I mean. As saying, Jack, this season does not end well for us either way. Either we lose to your lot, and that's just kind of that just ends our season, or we are the last chapter of the horror story, which is Aaron Rodgers sneaking his jammy ass into the playoffs, and we're on all the ESPN highlights when they rerun it of how the Packers made the playoffs from nowhere. That's our nightmare we have these next 2 weeks now if we don't win out. So, yeah.
You're far too optimistic about how that game's going to go. Packers win by 20 in that game.
Jesus Christ!
The Vikings are awful. I don't care what their record is, and I've said it every single time, and we proved it. The Vikings are a bad football team that have lucked their way to this record. They are worse than the Lions. They are worse than the Packers as a football team.
I think
and
Ken
they're
said
in
somewhere. I think Ken said somewhere in the chat, if I like crack you over the head with your crystal ball, can you just move closer to your camera so I can?
Is it lucky to win 10 one-score games?
Yes.
Is that lucky? And
well, Ryan will know.
Justin Jefferson. Don't put that guy alone. Justin Jefferson. Maybe Kirk Cousins is completely unpredictable, and I think everyone has their doubts about him, but no one has any doubts about Justin Jefferson.
Hey, Ryan Dengle, he'll know all about one-digit wins. Northern Illinois won pretty much all their games by one digit last year, and then they finished smack bottom of the MAC this year. It just fraudulent teams win narrowly, so Ryan will know all about that.
And you talked about the college football scene yesterday. What did you talk about?
We went through the latest dealings in the transfer portal. A lot of quarterbacks have been moving. Then we had a recap of bowl season. So far, we're about halfway through it. I am 14-12 in my predictions at the minute, so I'm still above 500. I think we're level actually. And then we previewed the playoffs, which come in this weekend. So it's all good. And then we're doing our final season mock drafts next week, and then we're starting to do all the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl stuff. So a lot coming up, but it was good fun the other day.
Fantastic. Right, if you're on YouTube and Twitch, stay right there because we're continuing on live. But if you're on the audio show, please don't forget to follow us on our socials: Royal Lions UK, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And the Facebook group for worldwide fans is Detroit Lions Fans UK, One Pride Worldwide. The website, ROTLUK.com. Please don't forget to subscribe, like the show, rate us 5 stars or whatever you can. We've launched a feedback form, which is in the description down below. We'll just continue running. If you have any constructive criticism about us or anything you want to say that isn't on a Apple review or whatever, then you can do that. It's a Google form, so just click down there, or there's a tip jar down there as well if you want to donate anything to us too.
I think Matt's predictions are too negative. That's a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Anyway, our thanks to Bear Down Chicago, Jack and Brendan. You have been absolutely fantastic as always. To Stephen, to Anne, thanks for your company. Guys in the chat, appreciate you and all your questions. We'll see you on Sunday. I'll be running a live show as always for the game. But we hope you have a good New Year's celebration for now. Let's go Lions, One Pride.
Yes.
Beat the Bears.
Recording stopped.
Hashtag.
Yeah, right. We're still live. obviously. But
Can I bring up a point, a take I've had? I mentioned it to you, Matt. I've been sitting on this all season, ever since Hard Knocks.
hmm
Okay. Okay. So I mentioned to you in our DMs that I found it very odd how Deuce and your DC spent so much time like trash talking each other. I found that to be very odd. But what I found to be very disconcerting, and I'm just curious if you've got any concerns as well, was like I think like sometimes you can be a great football player and not necessarily be a great coach. And Deuce Staley like really it was off-putting to me. Now I've never coached or played at the NFL level, but I have coached and played a lot of football. And generally a rule of thumb in coaching is to try to catch guys doing good, or at least to sandwich your criticism. And what I saw from Deuce Staley was a guy who screamed so much he lost his voice. And in game, in a preseason game, just absolutely torching. I believe it was Williams. Is it Williamson?
Williams,
For
yeah.
Williams, thank you for not taking an angle, for not planting his foot in the ground and cutting back on a designed run that he was supposed to do, right? So he's screaming at him and screaming at him, and then they go back to the game, and then Williams does it and he scores. And is it, hey, way to go, bud? Nice work, man. You did it. Touchdown, success. You're doing it right. I'm proud of you. Be proud of yourself. No, no. It was right back at him, just right back in his kitchen, screaming at him some more. And I would think that would wear itself out real fast at any level, but especially at the NFL level, just to not have like you're building up equity with these players all the time. And that includes catching them doing good. So am I totally off base here? Is he doing fine? Are you pleased with him in the running back room, or what are your thoughts?
But
I
Dan
think it
just
was
wants
Swift,
to qualify with
wasn't it?
Swift. Yeah, Dan.
It was
did say
Swift.
It was DeAndre Swift.
It was Swift. That's right.
It was Swift, and
Yep.
I'll quickly
Thank
say
you.
mine with the thing with Swift this year, or I guess in general, he has gotten lazy. I think there was a point where he believed that he was it, and he wasn't. And I think the harsh tone of treatment reflects that. It's kind
Okay.
of not Juice been negative to him. It's always getting at him, pushing him to be better, pushing because he was ignoring. He's done it in games recently. He's not following his blockers. There are lots of examples of him cutting in field or going somewhere he's not meant to do, which is part of his game. We've been very frustrated with him about it. So
Okay.
I think for me, he's different with all his running. Obviously, he demands a lot of his running backs, but in Swift's case in particular, as he said, he knows he can be special. He knows he can be one of the best running backs in the league, but until he starts playing the game right, listening to his coaches, etc., he won't be. And I think it's the kind of line you have to take with him. I don't know, it may not translate on the stat sheet at the minute, but it did work at the start of the year until he got injured. He did look a lot better. And I mean, we've had Justin Jackson in the team who's come in and done well. We've got guys in there. I think it's just his style and how he plays. But in Swift's case, he needed a kick up the arse. So
Yeah, he doesn't treat Justin Jackson the same way. Sorry, Steve.
In terms of, experience of NFL coaching or anything like that at all, but like I play sport and I've got a coach, and I need to be screamed at. Like I really respond to it. Like if my coach, which she does frequently, absolutely balls me out, then I play better. And I'm like someone who's like very positive and yeah, you're doing well, keep it up. Like that doesn't work for me. I need someone in my face screaming at me, and that works for me. I respond to it, but it's I think it's very situational. Like if I was at work and my boss was like that,
Pound sand.
in the world of sport, that's what I personally respond to. But at the same time, I know people in my team who they need like patience, and they need quiet words and the arm around the back. I think it must be how Swift is. But I, I get your point that at NFL level, you would expect that that would run pretty dry quite quickly with a lot of these guys. But then the Lions don't really have any superstars.
I think the thing with Swift is, and Dan's just pointed it out in the Twitch chat, Swift has played 398 snaps in his rookie year, 560 last year, and 344 this year. This guy has a game or two, and Jeff Risdon for Lions Wire put it very well. He has the odd game or two where he breaks out like a superstar. Looks like he can do it, does what he's meant to do, and then for 15 games doesn't. And at some form or fashion, he needs to start producing, and I think they've tried the carrot with him, and I think they're just trying the stick. Like, some way we are going to get you to produce, or you're going to be done here. He was regarded in fantasy as a round one running back this year, which is laughable. Like, week one against Philadelphia, he ran for like 140 yards in a career high, and then he's got double that the rest of the year. Like, he's been bad, and you don't see Deuce shouting at Jamal or Justin, and Craig Reynolds. He's been very supportive. Like, you see the other side to him now. Jeff Risdon, who I just mentioned, thinks that Deuce Staley will be a head coach next year.
Really?
Yeah, so he's very
well respected.
He's very well respected here, and he thinks he'll get a head coaching job before Ben Johnson, who everyone's creaming themselves over, who's our offensive coordinator. So Ben's obviously done a really good job with our offense and making it tick in certain situations, but he's only a one-year guy, and Deuce has been an assistant head coach with us and then with the Eagles before, so he's got a lot of experience doing what he does right now. So I kind of agree. I think that Deuce will get a head coaching role next year, and I think what you see from Hard Knocks was edited down into the entertainment parts, which is him shouting. Enough. I don't think that is him really.
But I mean,
always the joke, that there's different types of coaches, right? There's shorts coach. He's the guy that wears shorts when it's freezing ass cold outside. There's visor coach, and we know who that is. And then there's yeller. There's the yellers, and I guess your perspective is interesting to me because in my experience, the guy that yells the most is infrequently also one of the better coaches. I know that I had an epiphany early on where I was, yelling at kids and then I suddenly turned the switch and thought, well, if they're not doing it right, it's because I'm not coaching it well enough. Stop yelling at them and explain to them how it is that they need to be doing it. And that's why I just thought it was weird to see, the two coaches spending so much time, at least on Hard Knocks, at each other. I'm like, hey, go get to your players, go get to your unit, go get to your position and do some freaking coaching. You guys are just I don't know. It just seemed like so, and maybe it was for the cameras. I don't know. But it was just, again, it was just a take of mine. It was off-putting the way that it came off on.
So a really good example to use here, I think last season, right at the beginning of the year, they showed a flare-up between Aubrey Pleasant and Jeff Okudah when he got absolutely burnt on a I think it was just before he suffered his Achilles injury in that game. And Okudah sat on the bench and he's there yelling and yelling and yelling. And he got blown up all over Twitter and that. What they didn't show you was 2 plays later when he come in and made a play, he sat there on the bench with him with his arm around him, congratulating him, showing it. And they exacerbate the big things for show, but you don't see the little bits afterwards as well. Because I don't, like you say, with the shouters, they won't last long. They will not last long because they'll lose the respect of the players and the players will stop trying here. I think it's just a very, very passionate group because with them being ex-players, let's say they still kind of feed off it. There's still that in there, but at the root core of it, they care, and that's why they do it. He wants, you see him sat in the meeting saying that DeAndre Swift can be the best guy in the league, and he wants him to be the best guy in the league, and that it's his responsibility. So he's got to be tough on him, and if you've got to tell him some home truths, then that's the way he gets there doing it. He can't mollycoddle. Everyone does it differently. I can't imagine Ben Johnson ever shouting at anybody ever, but he's the analytics guy. He does it that way, another way. But each coach to their own, really, I guess.
More on Packers Vikings, perhaps. Steve, you didn't really give too much of a take on what you thought because I kind of cut that off a little bit to finish the show. But what do you think is going to happen?
So my view is very much that the Vikings are going to be absolutely humbled by the first decent team they play in the playoffs. I think like they'll come up against like a San Francisco or a Philadelphia and they'll get utterly crushed. Do the Vikings have enough to beat a very, very, very average Packers team? I kind of think they do. Um, I think the fact it's at Lambeau, and what's the weather like, Jack? Is it still like super cold weather around?
The negative temperatures, the sub-zeros have subsided. At least here in the Chicago area, I've not checked above the cheese curtain to see what it's like.
Is that a technical meteorological term?
I think that is an official meteorological term. Yeah, it's like the land of Karen. I think is another, the land of Karen Rogers beyond the cheese curtain.
Yeah. So I think that the Vikings. I think they can do it, but will they do it? I think they'll lose by 2 points to a Mason Crosby field goal after a bad, a dubious PI decision. That's what I think.
That's
I
exactly what I said. It's going to be the refs who do it, and it is.
We've seen it. We have seen how this story ends so many times. So yeah, I think it'll be. I think it'll be a good game and a close game, and the Packers will shade it after being behind for most of it.
How beautiful would it be if the Vikings get it done? We win, the Packers lose, and they're eliminated.
Yes,
Beautiful.
but then the Packers' sole reason for playing in Week 18 is stomping our fun down, and that's what they've done for millennia now, is ruin our fun. So I'd rather they had something to play for, to be fair.
You're a
Just
sick
me.
human being.
I'm not a sick. If you want to go to the playoffs, you've got to be a good team in most cases. I want to get there on merit, and if this team is not ready yet, so be it. It's not ready. We will be next year.
We were 1
This
and
year
6.
ain't our
If
time.
we get in because Rodgers
I am not
doesn't play
sneaking
and
in
we
the
go 9
back
and
door.
8, we still merited it on the second half of the season.
I am not
Sorry.
sneaking in the back door from an overall 90-point game against the Bears where we win by 2 and then we lose at Lambeau, but getting through other results. I want us to earn our way in there and really feel like I belong in there. And I don't know.
I think the thing is, it's just shown up what a deeply unpleasant human being Aaron Rodgers is. That he's playing for a dog awful team, and he's trying to he's flexing on the Bears fans and screaming I own you and all of this kind of like trash talk on the Pat McAfee show, and
last week
just disgusting.
he was like, "Oh, you're playing 3 teams above 500," and he was like, "One of them is 500." Like, fuck off, Jesus Christ!
Such an asshole.
And if it couldn't get any worse, he came out this year and he's got like curtains as a haircut. Like, what the hell are you doing?
I don't know what. I mean, would it be awful if they made it and got beat by the Niners again? I think that would probably be a little bit enjoyable to see.
It would be funny. It would be funny, but I'd rather we got in there at their expense this time.
The thing is, if the Packers get into the playoffs, they've won 5 straight. And what we thought about this defense in the beginning of the year was it was going to be one of the league's best, and the offense was going to be not great, but they'd do enough to win games with their defense being good. What happens if that defense is actually going to be that good down the stretch? Because it could be, and it has woken up a bit. Like, I worry that we'll look back at this season and they'll say, in the final 6 weeks of the season, including the playoffs, the Packers were the #1 defense in football. And in a couple of rookie wide receivers, they found themselves enough of an offense to get over the line. And they're the first 7 seed in history to win the Super Bowl. Like, that is the darkest
This is
time.
horrible, chat.
What
this is terrible, chat.
I apologise, Jack. We're not here for this
It's the darkest
stuff.
timeline. I'm not saying it because it's fun. I'm just saying
it's Christmas, not Halloween.
It's not
this
Christmas
is Lord
anymore.
Of the
That's
Rings,
finished.
This is Lord of the Rings, and Sauron wins. This is terrible, chat.
It is.
Spending your time in dark, dark places.
Yeah.
That's called being a Lions fan, Jack.
And that's why we need to go to Lambeau with both teams something on the line and beat them and banish these dark thoughts. You've got to banish the ghost.
It's the last stand in Mordor, isn't it? Like going to Lambeau.
Yeah, exactly. The last stand in Mordor.
You talked about drafting Swift. What if you drafted Dylan? And you haven't gotten any payoff until now, right?
Hey,
last couple weeks. He's been shit.
we're talking about drafting Bijan this year, and that's getting us some heat. We need a running back this year, and
Yeah.
we need. Hey, I guess we're not on the show anymore, but what do you reckon with your situation this off season? I mean, a lot of
Yeah,
cap's good, but a lot of cap means there's room to be
least.
abused by players and those. And is it going to be a good thing they've got all this money, or do you expect them to use it all at once? Is it going to accelerate this rebuild? I mean, what do you kind of expect having all that? It's about 120 million, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I see nothing but upside. I feel like we're going to be able to leverage. I feel like we're doing something that we've never done before, which we talked about last time I was on, which is tearing it down to the studs, not taking half measures, not signing, wide receivers that are, on the back nine of their careers. I see us, continuing to try to leverage, our draft position to get more and more picks, stack cap room, and see what we can do with that. But on the same token, I don't think Poles is somebody that is desperate. I think he so far has shown that he has a willingness to spend the money where the money should be spent. In other words, if that means, if you don't get your inside, D lineman in the draft, then maybe you get a premium one, and that's where you spend some of that, ample cap money, just as a for instance. Um, I don't know. It's interesting because I don't know as if we are where you were last year at this time, because I don't know. I just see us as having way more holes to fill. I mean, I don't think there's maybe one viable guy currently on the D line, right? And that's Jones. There's maybe two viable guys that will remain on the offensive lineman, and that's Braxton and Jenkins. You don't know what you're going to do with Monty, and so you don't have any, like, I don't think, high tier playmaking running back at this point. You don't have a number one wide receiver, and you're not sure where you're going to get him from. Um, you're going to be looking for linebackers. Morrow has been good, but Morrow is a bit of a fill in. Sandboard has been good, but I don't think we have the body of work yet to say that he's your interior linebacker. So I don't know. I mean, I don't. How do we get to where we are to having Swift and Williamson and Williams and St. Brown and Chark and, do you know what I'm saying? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I
Jack,
do think we have a potential
Well,
for a
do you think
Cincinnati
because
Bengals like turnaround. That's the high end possibility, but I don't know if that's feasible.
just fill us in a bit on the background of moving the stadium, because quite often in this kind of rebuild, whether it's football or soccer, that often plays a part because they're going to want to almost time that rebuild for the new stadium, aren't they? What's the kind of timescale on the whole move?
Boy, I think I would have to research a bit, but my feeling was that was down the road. I mean, further in terms of the sequence of the rebuild. I thought, if I
Is it
remember
under
correctly,
construction or
like five to 6 years. I don't
okay?
even know if I don't even think they have finalized everything with Arlington Heights yet. You know what I mean? I think they've got the land. I think they've got some mock-ups. They need to work out the details, with the local municipalities, and who's paying for what. Is Arlington Heights going to chip in some tax money? Are the Bears going to foot the bill for all of it? So I think some of those fine details have yet to be determined.
But there's no prospect of a Soldier Field like redevelopment. They're definitely going to move.
I would say it's 90% or higher that they're going to
And
move.
So
is the fan base kind of behind it?
It's mixed feelings, I think. But I do think that generally speaking, people think that it is a good idea, unless the city was going to somehow just revolutionize that lakefront stadium, make parking more accessible. Again, not do a half measure stadium like they did last time. I mean, they would have to, all the ducks would have to fall into line, like, for them to be able to redo something on the lake, which, by the way, would be fantastic. It's a beautiful venue on the lake. But I just think, like, we're looking at situations where some of the greatest franchises, the Dallas Cowboys, aren't in Dallas. They're outside of the city proper. Uh, Folks can take the train pretty easily from Chicago, get to Arlington Heights in no time. It's going to be like the entire complex, kind of the Wrigleyville or the Fenway Park mentality. I think that folks are on board with better seating, better parking, more modernized stadium. I think they're on board.
And the trophy cabinet's as new as it was when they moved there. I don't
Oh,
think they've won anything since they've gone, has it?
oh, so apparently they're
No, I mean
going
the
to reveal the
Cowboys.
design of the arena and the surrounding area around Super Bowl time. That's when the design gets shown, and then apparently it could take up to 10 years to complete the entire project, but that includes office space, flats, restaurants, and hotels. So the stadium could get done far in advance of that, but it's still going to be a construction site for a long time, even if they start playing games there. So
Yeah, they've pushed out some renderings that look pretty good. And I will say, to add to the controversy, the city of Chicago did submit their own renderings of a remodeled on site current site stadium, but I don't think that really had much legs.
Are they doming it? Is it
They
domed
are
or?
not. They are not. I'm not sure folks agree with that. I think most folks would like at least something that is removable or movable or half domed or something, so that you can have kind of that year-round venue that includes concerts and, I don't know, hosting NCAA tournaments, kind of like a Lucas Field feel to it. But I can't remember what their decision-making process was in terms of.
I think the
so
Bills, hasn't the Bills' new one got a weird, well, their one they're planning to build's got some kind of weird curved roof that's meant to keep the elements out but keep it
Right.
open or something, isn't it? I think it's their one. I think they've come
mm,
up with some way
it
to try and
is.
keep it open, but it's just like a weird curve or something like that.
So the press release, as per StadiumDB.com in September, stated that it had a roof that couldn't be retracted. This new Bears stadium. So I don't know whether that's out of date now, but there we go. There was a question for you from Dan actually in the chat, Jack, just about priorities in the offseason. The number one priority, and he suggests offensive line, because we've heard that the offensive line obviously isn't that great. But if you are picking where you are without a trade down, that doesn't feel that viable to me. What do you think? Do you have you had done much work on the draft so far?
Mostly just in terms of priorities, so that makes it a good question. And my feeling has been that if you are picking at 1, 2, or 3, and you have what you believe to be a home run, no injury history, no character issues, NFL ready, Aiden Hutchinson. If you've got somebody that you feel is in that category, then you use that pick. And I would guess that would probably end up being a D lineman. If that's not the case, then you trade it and you leverage it for as many picks as you possibly can. In my opinion, the D line right now is a higher priority than the offensive line. So I think it would probably go something like maybe defensive line, offensive line, wide receiver, linebacker, in that. But again, I do have some confidence in polls in terms of best player available. He had a good board. He stuck to his board. I heard him yesterday recounting the fact that they didn't think that they laughed when the discussion of Kyler Gordon at 38. Like, they didn't even think, like, they didn't laugh because they didn't like Kyler Gordon. They laughed because they thought, no way will Kyler Gordon be available. And so when he fell there, they stuck to their board and they took him. Brisker and him, they thought both guys NFL ready. And so I do really appreciate that. I don't think he'll reach for a wide receiver. I don't think he'll overpay for a wide receiver. I think he wants to be real sure when he does, go after a number one. I'm not sure if I answered the question. Did I?
I was just, I was just about to say, again, they said the Fields help didn't come in the draft last year, but if you are second and it is a D lineman, obviously that's the elite pick going to the defense again. Your high second pick is gone because it's gone, been traded away. So you may be looking towards the end of the second and the third before Fields gets any help. And the offensive line classes and wide receiver classes are not great this year in terms of the top end talent for me, anyhow. Do you think they will look to help him more in free agency as opposed to the draft if, where the chips fall and it is going to be a defensive type draft just because of the kind of guys who are available? Do you think it will be free agency where they look to help Fields instead of the draft?
Well, I mean, again, that's the conundrum when it comes to wide receiver. I think, I mean, personally, I think they're in a really tough spot. I think unless something miraculous happens where Adams wants out of Las Vegas, or some other disgruntled receiver demands a trade, and doesn't like their current situation. I'm not sure what our options are. We discussed the possibility, of trading with the Bengals to potentially get T. Higgins. Nah, yeah, I'm with you, Matt. I don't love the. I like T.
I
Higgins.
hate it. I hate it for you guys.
You don't like T. Higgins?
I just don't think he. So that projected trade, you went down a heck of a long way. I think
Right.
the Draft Network talked about it, and it meant that if the draft had parity, then you'd value T. Higgins at something like the 6th overall pick. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, I like him, but he's not that good.
Right. Yeah. So that like makes it extremely difficult. Again, I do think one of the things that people have complained about polls not helping out Justin Fields enough, and I really truly think that wasn't designed. It was quite simply, we have so many areas of need.
Yeah.
Where are the best players on our board that can fill what if it would have been offensive line, he'd have taken it. If it had been wide receiver, he'd have taken it, in my opinion. I do think he's a savvy GM so far. And so I think it really will just depend on what they prioritize as a need, and then how that juxtaposes with the players that become available. Which to me, that's the way you should do it. You should exhaust all options.
But does there not come a point where you have to, because he can't take another season of punishment like this, I guess. So he's been injured, he's playing through injury. You can't keep doing it. Is there a way where sometimes it might have to become a priority because he can't carry on this way for the rest of his career?
Well, I think yes. I mean, if you're saying that Justin Fields is your franchise quarterback, then that's a quarterback that you choose to then begin prioritize and build around. So your point is an excellent one. Whether that be what we saw with Josh Allen is probably the prototype example, where once they decided that he was the guy, then guess who they the next thing they've got Stephon Diggs as a for instance. But I don't know. On some levels, you think about like the idea that you've got, if you get your elite quarterback, and then you find your pass catching tight end, your elite number one wide receiver, and then I'm not sure if you take the 49ers, as a composite for running back, where you just interchange running backs. I think personally you do that as opposed to paying an elite running back. Um, that's, man, it's a tall order, isn't it? I just feel like I'm not quite sure how you fill that out. So I mean, I guess to answer your question more directly, I do say them taking very likely, a high tier, D line prospect, and a high tier O line prospect, and then I'm not sure where it goes from there.
I'm gonna have to wrap this shortly, fellas, to edit and
Yep.
get it done before
Me,
bed. But
me too.
Steve, there was just a comment in the chat. Steve, are you asleep? Because you have a habit, I think, of sitting and listening and not saying
Uh,
something until you have something to say. So I didn't know if you had something that you wanted to say before we finish, because there was a comment in the
um,
chat about it.
I'm very much awake. I've just been listening to some really good chat, and it's been great to have Jack on.
Thanks.
Um, and yeah, this. I mean, like, I just feel we're at a very critical point in the season, but also it kind of feels like the whole NFC North, like there's just a lot going on. So for me, this is like a good times. But we've got to where we are, in terms of our own rebuild. But I just want to get through the next 2 weeks because we've seen the doom monger
Right.
and the nightmare scenarios. And yeah, let's not end a pretty good year on a really rank, sour note in
Well,
Lambeau next week.
I was just about to say, how do you feel about this? Because we've been saying for years we want to play meaningful games in December and January. Jesus, when was the last time we did this? But at the same time, if we lost these last two, I'd feel like we'd not done enough. But then that feels like you've been ungrateful. I don't know, where would you be at if we lost, but I guess overall, when we look back on it, we'd be happy, but I would still feel unfulfilled. I don't know whether that's wrong or not.
Whether I predicted 7 and 10 or 8 and 9, but I kind of
Yeah.
feel we'd be where I thought we'd be. So I'm not disappointed. And from an offensive point of view, like we've had a pretty good year. I think my one disappointment is that, I just think Aaron Glenn and his defense, the fact that we've been like the 31st, 31st defense last year, and we're going to be like the 29th or the 30th this year. For me, that's not good enough, particularly when you think about the investment that we've put, Hutchinson, Pascal, Aquara. So for me, that's the kind of thing. Like I don't want to end on a sour note. And I also think if we do make the playoffs, we're going to be a team that no one wants to play. Like we are going to be like that berserker team that if you're like a high seed, you're not going to want to face us because you're not going to know what's going to turn up.
No.
I mean, so the thing about defense, and I know I was down on it when we were recording the show, but like before last week, the 5 weeks before that, we'd been a top 5 defense for those 5 weeks. Like, I know that overall we've been bad throughout the entirety of the year, but apart from last week, very recently, we've been very, very good. Now, I know I thought that our defense was going to be terrible in this game coming, but, remains to be seen. I guess, Steve, what I would say is if we can play up to the level of what we've done recently, bar last week, then playoff chances look really good on that aspect of things.
Just frustrating, isn't it? Because you've seen how good we can be. Like we've been awesome at times on defense. Like do you remember last season? I kept saying we've got no one that will make a play. Like we've had people this year that have absolutely made plays from out of nowhere that have like been game changing, and that's been so good as a fan. Just like I think I was talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like their defense, like their Super Bowl winning defense. I just loved watching them because every time their defense was on the field, you'd be thinking, here it comes. There's going to be a turnover. There's going to be a fumble. There's going to be a pick because they've got so many guys that were just balling out. And that's what I want to see as a fan. And for me, the fact that, people like Hutch have really like come on this year is great, but then all of a sudden, like where was Hutch last week? Like in an absolute void, black hole void. And that's the frustration, is the consistency.
Yeah, and we've been handed an opportunity here which we might not have expected in year 2 of this build. It's in our hands potentially, and we've got this wonderful opportunity to do something we've not done in so long, and it's trying to measure the expectation against that when all it's said and done, if we finish with 8 wins or whatever, or 7 wins, it's still technically meant to be a success, but it won't feel like one. But I just feel like opportunities don't present themselves every day, and you've got to take them when they arrive, and here it is. It's waiting.
The last 2 or 3 seasons, we've been sat there in the last couple of weeks of the season going, yeah, we want to win this game, but thinking, well, actually, if we don't win this game, this is going to improve our draft position. No one wants to be there again. Like, that's just a shitty way to enjoy football.
I was a month into draft pet this time last year. I was well prepped. I've not done any this year because I'm still too excited about the chances of us being in the playoffs. That's the difference. But
yeah. Right.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cheers, Jack. It's been fantastic. We'll see you soon.
Right.
Have a good Sunday. Have a good
Thanks
New
for having
Year.
me on, guys. All right. Thanks. See ya.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Fellas, see you soon. Maybe, Ant, are you free Sunday? You're working, I suspect. No.
No, it's at the first. I finish at 6, so I'll be like finishing as the game kicks off. So I'll be in, but not right away.
All right. People in the chat, hopefully see you live on Sunday for the game.
Okay.
Hope it goes well. Hope you have a good New Year's Eve and all that sort of stuff. Cheers for sticking
What
with
we
us
saying,
this time.
6 o'clock on Sunday, yeah? We're playing 6 o'clock Sunday, yeah.
That's it. I thought it was New Year's Eve for some reason, Saturday, but I was wrong.
No, it's New Year's Day, so...
Thank God for that. Right, have a good weekend all, and
all right.
see you Monday for the review show. Ciao.
Take it easy. See ya.